We are going to try to run this meeting extremely efficient. There's significant events happening in Baltimore today, and so we want to have a chance for everyone to participate in the events. Somebody said something about playoffs. Who's talking about playoffs? Okay, thought somebody said playoffs. Okay, so our first item is Mr. Jonathan Sachs. We have Mr. Sachs. We're going to talk about the redesignation of the Chesapeake Bay and the Chesapeake Enterprise Zone. Is Mr. Sachs not here yet? Okay, we're going to go to item 2, which is the appointment of Mr. Joe Dixon. Mr. Dixon, come on up. So Dixon, right, it's your first time in these chambers? Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you for meeting with different members, Mr. Dixon. And if you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon for everyone that's present. My name is Joe Dixon. I have had the pleasure of being in the process and currently chief in waiting for Baltimore County Fire Department. I continue to be thankful for the opportunity. I've had the opportunity also to meet many of the men and women that serve Baltimore County. Some of the leadership team are certainly here in the building with me. I thank them for their support. In addition to many members of the Affinity Group and some of our operational personnel. What I can tell you is that I'm encouraged by the level of enthusiasm, and I'm encouraged by the desire to be better and do better. For those watching that want to know about me, I grew up in Baltimore City. I started my career in Howard County, Maryland. I served there for 25 years. At every rank up into the position of assistant fire chief with a budget of over $300 million. I moved to North Carolina to be an executive chief, the fire chief there in North Carolina. And after being the fire chief in North Carolina for 3 years, I served in the city of Gainesville, where I was not only the fire chief, but a special advisor to the city manager, which was the exact capacity as an assistant city manager. So who am I and what do I bring to the table is what people would want to know. I am a 30-plus year veteran, as mentioned, executive chief officer in 3 departments, certified emergency manager, executive fire officer, certified fire officer, leadership, work on leadership and initiative with the International Association of Fire Chiefs, the current chair of the Black Chief Officers Committee. And I've worked on initiative with the IFC that include the Wing Spread Conference on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And just certainly glad to be here, glad to be a part of this process and bringing not just a resume and a CV that assisted me in standing apart, but also demonstrated competency. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Do any of the members have any questions, comments, or thoughts to share with Mr. Dixon? Councilman Crandall.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, thanks for the time that you spent. I think the chair alluded to this earlier. I think you spent a little bit of time with every member of the council in the last week or so. I really appreciated it. And what I found in talking with you was a gentleman who's extremely dedicated to his profession. And someone that's been around the block and knows all that goes into being a chief, including things like labor negotiations, and things that we don't think about, but that are all part of the job. So I'll look forward to voting for you coming up in the next legislative session, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Crandall. Councilman Ertel.
And I have to mention that incoming Chief Dixon is a polygrad, and I see Delegate Sidnor in the room, so he'll appreciate that as well. And we met in junior high, so I know he's a good man, and we're excited to have you come take care of the fire department here.
Thank you, sir. Do I tell the stories now, or we?
We'll maybe keep them away from the chambers.
Yes, sir.
We may have to go into closed session.
I forgot about the poly thing. Mr. Chair, may have to reconsider my endorsement.
Okay. Councilman Marks.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon, thank you for our conversation on Friday. I certainly appreciate your interest in this position and applaud your qualifications. My big issue on Friday when we talked was about emergency EMS billing and the fact that we need to support our volunteer fire companies, and look forward to working with the administration and all stakeholders to advance that goal.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, and Councilman Jones.
Chief Dixon, it's always good to see you. Having known you for many years and watched your performance in Howard County when I was there in Anne Arundel, certainly appreciate you stepping up and your willingness to come here and work with Baltimore County, and I look forward to supporting you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any additional comments or questions? Thank you so much, Mr. Dixon, and look forward to an affirmative vote on your nomination.
Okay, yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate the time you spent speaking with each of us. Okay, we're going to go back to Mr. Sachs. Mr. Sachs, I saw him walk in. Mr. Sachs, we're going back to the Chesapeake Enterprise Zone.
Thank you. Chairman Patoka and members of the County Council, I come before you today seeking your support for redesignation of the Chesapeake Enterprise Zone. The Enterprise Zone program is a state program administered by the Department of Commerce. The program was established to give local governments the legal authority to offer economic incentives, including real property and income tax credit in specific geographic areas. Baltimore County has 3 such zones: Chesapeake, Southwest, and Woodlawn. The Chesapeake Zone has been in place since 1995 and has been redesignated by the County Council 2 times since its establishment. Enterprise Zone redesignation is one element of a continuing business retention and development strategy to support existing businesses and attract new businesses to the zone, to promote development of vacant, underutilized land, encourage the creation of well-paying new jobs, and support the county's commitment to southeastern Baltimore County. The proposed zone for redesignation reduces the geographic area of the current zone from 7,051 acres to 5,790 acres. To qualify for designation, census tracts in the proposed zone must meet specific census data requirements and show disparities compared to data for Baltimore County, the state of Maryland, or the United States as a whole. The census data analyzed includes unemployment, poverty, median family income, and population decrease. With the currently designated Chesapeake Enterprise Zone, several census tracts were determined to be ineligible for redesignation. The impacted geographic areas are in the 5th Councilmanic District. Our team consulted with Councilman Marks on the best way to communicate to businesses that will be impacted by the redesignation. We are grateful for his assistance in creating the outreach plan. After speaking with Councilman Marks, our team in Economic and Workforce Development has identified 53 property owners within the area of the zone that is not included in redesignation. We are contacting them via email and will then go door to door to let them know of the change. Most of these property owners will still be able to apply for the benefits of the zone until the new zone goes into effect at the end of this year. The team in the Department of Economic and Workforce Development is excited to continue the work of helping businesses grow in the Chesapeake Zone and recruiting new businesses to the area. The county's application to the state for redesignation is due by October 15th, and we ask for your support for the redesignation resolution. Thank you, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Councilman Marks.
Thank you. I do appreciate that conversation. What is the timeline on that outreach?
Well, we've already started.
Okay.
So the first email has been drafted. I believe it's either going out this week or early next week. And then, like I said, we're going to be going door to door to make sure that businesses understand the window that they have to reapply and the changes to the enterprise zone.
Okay. Will you also be mailing?
Yes.
Okay. So emails, mailing, door to door.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Councilman Crandall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilman Marks, thank you for your cooperation on this. The Chesapeake Enterprise Zone, first created as the North Point enterprise zone, as you mentioned, back in 1995, there was not an entity known as Trade Point Atlantic at that time. So I think that we can see through measures like the Chesapeake Enterprise Zone and other public sector tools that were utilized not only by Trade Point but other businesses that are within this zone, that these programs actually can work. And I think that Trade Point is just an excellent example of public-private partnership in recreating a new job class in southeastern Baltimore County. So thanks for your work and your staff's work on this redesignation. And again, thank you to Councilman Marks for his cooperation on it.
Thank you,
Okay.
Councilman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions for Mr. Sachs? Thank you so much, Mr. Sachs. Our next item will be appointment to the Planning Board, and we have Mr. Scott Halupa. Mr. Halupa, come on down. Mr. Halupa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, I think I know a number of you. I'm pretty much a lifelong resident of the Dundalk area, been involved in community activities for a number of years. Along with Councilman Crandall's father, we helped host the first charrette process in Baltimore County, which led to the creation of the first CDC in Baltimore County. I've served on the planning board twice, first as a council representative and then again as a county executive representative. Long interest, both personal and professional, in sort of land use decisions. I did my undergraduate thesis, I was mentioning it to Councilman Ertel, I did my undergraduate thesis on school closings in Baltimore County, contrasting the Towson area to the Dundalk area. And I did my dissertation on the role of state lending institutions and neighborhood stability in Baltimore City. So I have a lot of interest and history in working on land use and housing and neighborhood issues.
Thank you, Mr. Halupa. Do any of the members have any questions? Councilman Marks?
Thank you, Mr. Halupka. Thank you for our meeting earlier. I appreciate that. I just have two questions. First, there were, I think, a number of members who expressed concerns about the last rezoning process. Specifically, issues were raised in councilmanic districts where the member did not reside. We talked about that, and can you provide any sort of way that the planning board could make improvements in the future and incorporate that procedurally into the planning board's meetings?
Sure. I mean, as I indicated, I think things have been rather informal before. I have never put many items up to CZMP. If I did, particularly when I became an at-large member, I thought it was the right thing to do, to talk to the council member, to talk to the council member's representative. But we don't have any formal process about that. So I think getting something down in writing so that all the board members know, all the planning board members know, particularly so many new ones coming on board, here is the process. For example, I would think that if you're the council member's representative, you should at least have discussions with your council member. Likewise, if you're an at-large member, you should at least be informing the council person and the council person's representative on the planning board what it is you're proposing. And if people have other, if the council has other thoughts or ideas, that's fine. I just think we need to formalize it, because I think when it's informal, sometimes you get people sort of doing things that you hadn't anticipated.
Okay, thank you very much. The other question I have has to do with neighborhood common zoning. I expressed my concern to you that the administration and the staff have not supported neighborhood common zoning in the recommendations that advance to the council. I would just appreciate your consideration of that in the future. It is an important tool. Many of us have used that in our districts to protect land from suddenly being sold off for development. And that is something that is personally very important to me, because I was the one who authored that legislation. So moving forward, I would appreciate your support for that.
Yeah, well, and I think the whole issue, I mean, I think often these are, set aside as part of larger development projects. And I think the whole issue of, how those pieces are handled, how HOAs in general, we're having an issue down in my particular neighborhood with the HOA that we have. I can imagine that there are a lot of things that we should potentially be looking at as a county that don't, yeah.
Any additional questions for Mr. Halupa? Okay, thank you, Mr. Halupa.
Hold on, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
Councilman Crandall, go right ahead.
Hi, Scott, how are you?
I'm good.
I think I appreciate your comments about making a more formal process, but I think you and I have known each other long enough where we can just call each other Todd and Scott, right?
Yep.
With regard, how formal is your vision for this sort of communication process? Is this something legislated, or that you would just like to institute as a matter of policy for the?
I would think at a minimum, something written down. We will be having a number of new planning board members. There will be more by the time that XCZMP is down. So at a minimum, having some sort of written rules, I think that we can tell all the planning board members, here's the process we expect you to be following, so that everyone's clear what the rules are. If, as we're developing those, people think that it's necessary to put it, make it more of a legislative requirement, we can cross that bridge at the time. But at a minimum, like I said, I think right now everything's been quite informal, and so people have been not sure and sort of free to interpret it as they see fit.
Agreed. I do think that it may be a little bit difficult to legislate a mandate that someone talk to someone before they do something that they're legally able to do. But a more formalized process that would lead to that courtesy, because it did happen this last CZMP in the 7th District as well, where the one issue in particular comes to mind where it just came really out of nowhere to a resident that I'm not even sure ever, to a Baltimore County resident who's on the completely other side of the county, and it was really hard to assess the motivation as to why that particular property was put in as an issue and not put in by the owners or the owners' attorneys themselves. And a member, I believe the first district representative put this particular property in. Yeah. So it was puzzling to me, and it was never communicated to me until I had to dig into the issue with the property owner themselves and their representation and the community. So it just sort of caught me off guard a little bit. But I do want to say, just as I said before, when you testified before us, I think when we confirmed you as an at-large member, I think, our politics at sometimes can be quite different, but I also know that you are extremely intelligent guy, been around this stuff for a long time, and I think that you can bring some, as you demonstrated tonight, you can bring some pragmatism to the position of chair.
Thank you.
So congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Lupa, where did you get your master's and where did you receive your doctorate?
No master's. I got my PhD from Hopkins.
Okay, that's impressive.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Mr. Halupa.
Thank you.
Okay, our next appointment, we're sticking with the theme of let me just say, for anybody who's interested, the Kansas City Royals did not score in the top of the first inning.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Next, we are going to hear from Emily Brophy on the planning board.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We have a speaker for this item.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
For the planning board?
Yes, for that planning board appointment.
For Mr. Halupa?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Brophy, just 1 minute. We're going to hear from a speaker. Thank you, Ms. Belcastro.
My apologies. Sharonda Hoffman.
Okay.
Registered to speak on this appointment. She is here in person.
She is here in person? Ms. Hoffman?
Yes, that's what her registration said.
I don't see her, Ms. Belcastro. Is she online, possibly?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we'll skip that for right now, and Ms. Brophy, we're back to you.
Good afternoon, council members. Chair, thank you for your time this afternoon. My name is Emily Brophy. I'm a lifelong Maryland resident. I've actually lived in Baltimore County for almost 2 decades now. I'm a small business owner, professional services company. We focus on accounting, tax, and real estate services. My father started that business in the 70s, and my brother and I took over a few years ago. I'm an active community member. I've been on the board of the Towson Chamber of Commerce, on the board of Edenwald, the retirement community in the area, as well as various boards. Currently for Baltimore County, I've been serving on the Tourism Commission since 2021 and on the Planning Board since 2023. I've had the opportunity as a Planning Board member to go through the CIP and CZMP process. And I feel with my professional and personal background, understanding how to navigate different problems, looking at both sides of the issue, having collaborative discussions would lend really well to the vice chair position here. And I just really appreciate the honor of being considered, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Brophy. Do any of the members have any questions, comments, or thoughts to share with Ms. Brophy?
Ms. Brophy, thank you for stepping up. I know you've been a vital part of the planning board, and we appreciate you also being on the council structure committee as the planning board member. And I've worked with you through the Towson Chamber, and it's always been, you've always had a good open mind to things, and I think you're going to do great as moving up to vice chair.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Councilman Marks.
We thank you. We had a very good relationship when I was a councilman for Towson, and I look forward to serving this position.
Thank you.
Councilman Jones.
Yes, Ms. Brophy, I guess I want to thank you so much for your service to Baltimore County. We certainly appreciate it. I've known you for quite some time, and I think the world of you, and I think you do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Ms. Brophy, I want to thank you. I know that Planning Board has been a challenging year, and Mr. Halupa, too. You've had the master plan, you've had the CZMP, so there's a lot coming at you. And in addition, Ms. Brophy, not only were you an active participant in the Planning Board, you also participated, as Councilman Ertel said, in the council expansion work group. And, between November and March, you met about a dozen times, had approximately half a dozen public hearings. You produced a 150-page report. And good news for everybody, there's an executive summary at the front of it. So thank you for you and the other members of that group for the work that you did, in addition to just being a planning board member.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to participate in that.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Thank you, Ms. Brophy.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is item 6924. That's my bill. So this bill is to rezone RO property. It's not a rezoning, it's qualifications based on resultant from the comprehensive zoning map process, where the applicant and the community members had a bit of philosophical differences. We put them both in one room and asked them to come out with one theme. They successfully came out with a single theme that they all agreed upon, so the zoning was put in place. And they also asked that these minor qualifications to the RO zone specific to the Pikesville design area be implemented. So turns out one of the few times that we get a win-win situation in this business. So I'm pleased to put this forward and hope my colleagues will support it on Monday. Our next item is...
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know you were probably going to go to 70. We also have 74 that has 2 speakers, and I thought maybe go to that since it only has the 2.
7424?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that is uses permitted in the manufacturing light zone. And that's all council members, who's the specific sponsor? Councilman Marks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I appreciate you taking this early. So this is a fantastic bill. This bill will allow for the conversion of the former Free State Arena on Allender Road in White Marsh into a training facility for one of our local labor unions. This is exactly the type of enterprise we should be advancing in Baltimore County. We've talked a lot up here about the need for a more skilled workforce, and this bill helps advance that goal.
Thank you, and I understand we have some speakers for this.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Our first speaker is Russ Mirable, who is here in person.
Okay. Mr. Mirable.
Good evening. My name is Russ Mirable. I'm president of the of the Rosedale Community Association. I'm here probably on a different level. I'm glad to hear some of the planning board speakers. I'm here because there's a need down in Rosedale, one of your members, in reference to a high-rise housing project. We were supposed to have safety features recommended by a council member, and now after the PUD issue was settled and agreed to with the developer, now we have no fence for security and or separation. I think I'm going to pass out to the council members. You can read it on your own. I believe that you should talk to one of your council members and say, hey, this isn't correct and it's not funny. And I'm here because, not for me, but for behalf of people that are going to be seriously harmed if what was promised to the community in lieu of a high-rise, I just think it's not right. That's all it is to it. And the bottom line is, I think all you as council members, if you make a promise to the community, I think you should keep it. And I know a couple of you sitting up there will be running for a county executive. The only reason why I know that is I've seen you in the Dundalk Parade. I spoke to both of you. I spoke to you, sir, Mr. President. I commended you on your leadership of saying about the schools. And these developers, and I'm not against the developers, I want you to know that. And in fact, I have a letter here from Homes of America, that same district, our district's cut in half, full cooperation. They have Section 8 housing, they have everything. We've cooperated fully with them. This other project, Ridgedale, it's a community accepts the fact that they were guaranteed to, they were able to build there, and they accepted that. However, they wanted a little bit of security, safety, because I think if you all watch TV today, or if you look at the newspapers, which I have some here, you can find out that juveniles are running rampant today, and a lot of people who live down there are seniors. And that was one of the main concerns. And one of your council people had said, well, we're just going to put a fence up there. First, they said it looked like a compound. I'm talking about the developer. So we went out and got them a nice, real nice fence. I have copies here. I'll give it to you on the thing. And all of a sudden, they just don't want that. So it doesn't look nice. But they received their PUD. Now, we're going to be going to a hearing. I really don't want to do that because we have to hire an attorney for that. He's ready to go, but I don't think we should have to do that. I think you all made a deal, not you all, but the councilman made a deal, and now he's backing out of it after they received the PUD, the developer. This is why developers have a bad name, shall I say, amongst community members. But we cooperate with both of the our developers. But I think this is wrong that they did that. And I'll hand it out, but I'd like to have 30 seconds more.
Thank you, Mr. Mirable. We have a lot of speakers today.
I understand that. I shouldn't be here, but I think you should all correct one of your members.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Jonathan Sachs.
Mr. Sachs, come back up again.
Hello again. Thank you. Under Baltimore County zoning regulations, trade schools are only allowed in the manufacturing light zone if they're part of a planned industrial park of at least 25 acres or located in an IM district. As Councilman Marks indicated, this legislation would allow such uses in the ML zone by right. giving trade and business schools more flexibility to locate and operate in the county. The ML zone allows a number of uses that are industrial in nature, such as automobile assembly, but other uses are also permitted, including research institutes and athletic training facilities. Adding trade and business schools as a by right use in the ML zone is a common sense way to expand educational and economic opportunities in Baltimore County. Trade schools are a great pathway for folks to start a career here, and this bill is a great opportunity to support workforce development in Baltimore County. Again, we, the Department of Economic and Workforce Development, fully support Bill 7424 as drafted. Thank you to Councilman Marks for introducing this important legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Okay, does that conclude our speakers, Ms. Belcastro, on this item?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say good work to Councilman Marks on this. We have a training center in Dundalk that I mentioned previously that I think has been successful in helping that union 37 to be ready for the workforce that's necessary at Trade Point Atlantic. So I appreciate this nod to the skilled trades.
Thank you all for your support, all 7 of us.
Thank you. That concludes Bill 7424. I just want to go back to 6924, the RO modification in the Pikesville design area. I presented it, but I neglected to ask any of my colleagues if they had any questions or comments. And if there are none, we'll move beyond that. Okay, thank you for indulging me on that. Our next item is going to be Bill 70-24. Councilman Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council Bill 7024 is, and it's on for second consideration, repeals sections 3, 4, 5, and 8, and 9 of Bill 4724. That was passed by this council, I believe, over a month ago. I made my position on this legislation clear that the map that's attached to Bill 4724 and that is attached to the referendum that will be up on the ballot in November does not pass muster with me by any measure of transparency or public input. Charter's clear and has only become more clear through the deliberations on this piece of legislation. Redistricting was not meant to be done by this body. And if anyone needs to look for any evidence of that, you can just look to the language that was included in Bill 4724 that changes the charter and restricts the ability for a future body from changing or redistricting or drawing a map in the same way. I do have to say that beyond my own position that's tied to the principle of what the charter states, what I believe it to state, and the process that we use to include a map in the referendum in November. It's important to remember where we got here, how we got here. Public input from folks that saw the size of the county, and as we grew, looked at a council that believed that it should match that growth. The purpose for putting in a referendum in the first place and putting a work group together was to help guide us in our own decision on the appropriate way, or one way at least, to expand equitably and effectively. I don't believe that the referendum intended to disenfranchise anyone. I don't believe that there was any intent to violate the charter in any way or malicious intent from any member here. But the way in which that we passed it does not sit with me or in my own interpretation of what the charter originally intended. Public input led to us being here. It should have been included in our process for drafting a map, and I do not believe it was done so. Up until this point, the folks that initially started this conversation were the folks that live in Baltimore County, supporting the 4 more referendum, supporting the 4 more effort. Through our own efforts here and our own deliberations, we determined that we could go our own way. It's fine, it's our responsibility, and it's also our right to do so. But I still stick to and can't get over the fact that if we were to draw a map and stick by that, why would we bother changing the language to prevent another body from doing the same? And with that in mind, if there had been a commission or a body that had produced a map that looked like this, you would have heard no complaint from me, no bill from me either. Barring the fact that that was absent from this process. And seeing as we're moving forward, since we've discussed this bill, that there seems to be some effort or at least discussions about creating a commission or an independent work group to then draw a map after the referendum if it were to pass in November. We've walked into some legal territory where there's concern over whether the county will be sued. And I know that between us that there is a disagreement on whether that should be valid or not. But we can wipe that completely away with the passage of 7024 because there won't be any map in which folks to sue the county over. If there is an intent from this body to at least initiate a process that includes the public in drawing of maps, we can start that right now and start that here by passing this piece of legislation and starting from scratch and engaging the public as the charter intended us to do so. With that, I won't belabor my point anymore. Mr. Chairman, appreciate the opportunity to reintroduce 7024.
Thank you, Councilman Young. Do any of the members have any questions, comments, or thoughts to share on this issue? Councilman Jones?
Oh,
I thought you, okay. I didn't see a.
okay. All right, I guess I'll go. First of all, I would urge us passing this bill. As I look back and think about, for example, the redistricting process that we went through because of the census, and think about all the testimony we received from community members and communities alike, making their concerns known in terms of don't split our communities up, bring our communities back together. We should be with this community, we should be with that community. And you think about all of that went into the process. Think about all the many hours and the many meetings and so much testimony. And then we, as a council, went and did it again, having to watch the redistricting commission. And to think that that whole process that we followed, the process that we have been following here in Baltimore County, which is outlined in the county code, that's been there since charter government. To think that we would decide that we're going to go another way, and just because a few words may not match up with the particular process, it's the only place in the county code that it talks about council districts and how to change the districts. To think that we would just throw all of that away, sit here and come up with a map and push it out to the community, I think is very, very problematic. And it just doesn't place us in a very good light. I really believe we are violating the county code when we produce the map, when the county code is real clear that the process is, number one, you give the citizens an opportunity to change the number of districts. Then number two, you have a redistricting commission made up of non-elected officials to produce and take testimony and produce a map. Then as a county council, we are to look at that, take all those things into consideration, and make a determination where we take 5 votes. Now in the past, especially our last redistricting efforts, there's 4 Democrats, there's 1 Republican, which meant we had to have consensus to move forward on anything we did. And after many, many hours, we did. But that is far from the process we just witnessed, where this map was put out there, and many citizens have no idea that there is such a map out there. So let's talk about the map for a minute. The map will become law 30 days after the citizens vote for council expansion. if they vote for that, 30 days later, that map becomes law. Now, why is that important? Well, because you can have a redistricting commission after that will require 5 votes to change. But this legal map is sitting there. And whether you come up to a consensus or not, the question then becomes, if you don't come up with a consensus to change it after a redistricting commission did something and you don't agree with it and you don't come up with a consensus, it's my belief you will probably revert back to the legal map that has been passed, if it withstands the legal challenge, which I don't think it will. The other problem with the bill is when we look at, I don't know about you, but I remember what we went through when it came to whether or not we wanted to continue to have an appointed school board. Once upon a time, probably 15 years ago or more, our school board was appointed by the governor. Once again, tremendous testimony, tremendous debate throughout Baltimore County. It was placed on the ballot, and we ended up with a hybrid school board. Yet this bill, without any discussion from the community, without any public input, any real meaningful input, decided that we would make a recommendation on behalf of the citizens of Baltimore County that the governor should lose 2 appointees in that hybrid school board. There was no real testimony or meaningful discussion on that. And then I can go again with the idea of full-time, part-time. Once again, these are debates. I've been here for 10 years. These are debates that we have had over the years. And just like that, this bill decides it's going to settle that and weigh in on that. So I believe that the way we got here in terms of council expansion is sort of like fruit from a poison tree. There's so many problems with it. It's just not a good path forward for Baltimore County if you look at all the things go with it. My colleague, Councilman Young, talked about how another part of the bill literally closes the door. It says, okay, if you agree with what the council did, okay, we're going to take it upon ourselves to change the districts, make a new map, change it. Now let's close the door so it can never happen again. Because I don't know. I mean, either you believe in it or you don't. So anyway, that's the reason why I think we should pass this bill, to close this chapter, hit a reset, and give the citizens an opportunity to go through the process. And then at some point, what this is all about, I didn't mention it before, but what it is all about is free and fair elections. People should have a right to choose the representative of their choice and not have that choice made for them before they ever step into the voting booth. And that can only happen if you have fair and impartial maps that not have been gerrymandered to a degree to which it guarantees certain winners and losers. So thank you very much.
Councilman Crandall?
Okay, unlike the last work session, I'm going to do my best to maintain my composure in the face of this nonsense, which is actually what this is. Councilman Young, I've been on the council a little bit longer than you have. What we do not do on this council is spot our colleagues, which is what you've done. You cannot, well, you can because you're doing it, but think about this. How many 6-to-1 votes have you sat here and me be the only lone no vote? How many? More than a few, right? What would happen if every one of those bills, I went back a month or two later and said, hey, I disagree with it. I didn't like the process. I wasn't involved enough. What would happen if I did that, if we all did that? Because if I'm not mistaken, 4724 passed by a supermajority of 5-1. I've been in the position on this council, I put bills forth, and my bills were tabled, and I knew I never had the votes for them, so I didn't bring them back. I didn't want to put my colleagues through that. It seemed like a pointless exercise, just like the one that we're going through right now is. You know why it's pointless? You can't make up what you believe the charter says. The charter says it or it doesn't. I asked our attorneys in the last work session, did we do anything illegal? They said no. You're mad at the process because you didn't have a chance to gerrymander. And we'll get to the lessons. I'm trying to give you a lesson in council politics right now, Pat. And I'm sorry to be condescending, but I'm mad. So we'll hear from your former Democratic colleagues in the General Assembly. We'll get lessons on how to gerrymander. But you and Councilman Jones didn't have the opportunity to gerrymander it because the only free and fair elections that Democrats in the state of Maryland are interested in are ones in which Democrats win. And sorry, Councilman Young, but your voting record on gerrymandering is well established, and you know it. So we'll get these lessons on gerrymandering as our elected officials come up and tell us how to do it. And I'm just reminded of the fact that Councilman Young and Councilman Jones, they didn't like the process. But 3 years ago, we went through the entire process as spelled out by the county charter. And you know what? We still got sued. We still got sued. And the judge made us go back to work on it. And you know what happened? We changed what, maybe 2 precincts after hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees? Because the ACLU is a partisan organization and can't stand the fact that this map actually has some fairness in it, some political diversity in it. It's just mind-boggling to me how we would go back a couple months after passing a bill because 2 people didn't like it after a bill passed 5-1. So we're under threat of a lawsuit. So what? We've been sued before and we won because we know the ACLU's basis for their argument have no basis in legal fact. The thing that is missing here, and you spoke to that there were, Pat, talking to you again, you said that there has been talk of us going back and redistricting. Well, in fact, we are required, through Councilman Catch's amendment, we are required to go back, form a new redistricting commission, and redistrict by the fall of 2025. I didn't particularly like that amendment, but that amendment passed. I'm not trying to repeal the amendment because I didn't like it. And I didn't know about the amendment until the night that we were voting on it, or maybe a day before. I didn't whine about the process. I said, this is what my colleagues decided to do. We're within the law to do it. We've created a contiguous map based on compliance with the Voting Rights Act passed by Congress. It's based on census tracts. If you have a problem with the process, sorry, the process is over. You have a problem with the map, there's opportunity to address the map. What neighborhoods, if you have a problem with the map, please tell me. There was a delegate that spoke before us at the work session when the first time that we discussed this bill. And she said, wouldn't it be better if we worked together? And you know what? Even though I'm in like battle mode, she's right. This is an opportunity to work together. So this is an opportunity for me to say, you know what? Instead of just being mad about how this is happening and the time that we're wasting and the potential hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars that we will waste on a baseless lawsuit, I can be a leader and say, hey, delegate, You have a problem with the map? Tell me your problem with the map. Tell the redistricting commission when it's formed and has their required public meetings, the problems that you have with the map. If there are neighborhoods being torn apart, let's see if we can address it by moving some precincts, but still maintain our compliance with the Voting Rights Act. That's what we can do. We can show leadership here. We don't have to whine about the past. We can move forward the way that we always do, in a collegial way. And if there's a problem with the map, tell me the problem. Don't tell me about the process on how it was arrived. Because we already approved the process at which it was arrived when we voted on it, and it was approved by 5 votes to 1. So the offer stands to the community, to the delegates, to the senators who feel one way or another about it. You have a problem with the map. I don't want to hear about a problem with the process, because that time has passed. You have a problem with the map, let us know what your problem with the map is. Don't ask us to gerrymander it like the General Assembly has for the state of Maryland and for our congressional districts for years, for decades. Don't ask us to do that. Tell us what your actual problem with the map might be, and we can talk about it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Complete.
Councilman Catch?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to mention the legislation which changed the composition of the school board to each council district electing its own member of the school board. There's some at-large positions that are nominated by nominating commission then appointed by the governor. I know something about the bill because Delegate Olszewski, Delegate Lafferty, and I were the ones who introduced the bill. And I can assure you that there was a lot of give and take on it. There was a lot of public input, public hearings in Annapolis. And so that particular piece of legislation did have the support of the people of Baltimore County, and the legislature went through a very detailed system to approve it. And I'm very proud of that particular bill. With this bill 7024, is a totally unnecessary piece of legislation, completely unnecessary. First of all, the councilman from Dundalk mentioned an amendment that I put on the original bill, which states that this council has until October of 2025 to make changes or adopt an entirely new map. What will happen, and I do have the support of enough people that this will happen, there will be a commission. It will consist of citizens from each legislative district. It will have public hearings. And the reason I put this amendment on the bill is I wasn't happy over the lack of openness and transparency with the map that's in the bill. So I said I would not vote for this constitutional amendment unless my amendment was adopted, because I wanted to make sure that the public would have a role in the map. Now, I will say, I don't usually make statements like this, but I was really offended by the letter I got from some of the members of the state legislature in opposition to the map and the process that was followed with the council map. And the reason I say that is that certain members of the legislature who signed that letter voted for some of the most gerrymandered partisan maps that I've ever seen. I know that, I don't think any of them were there, maybe they were, I don't know. When the congressional map, the one previous to this one, the 3rd congressional district is described as the most gerrymandered district in the United States of America. And some people who signed that letter voted for that map. So I don't appreciate being criticized for this particular map in the bill by people who voted for partisan and gerrymandered maps. This legislative map is a disgrace. Splitting communities. If you take a look at it, I mean, it goes into Harford County, it goes into Carroll County. It is just so bad. Splitting communities. Anytime you have districts that are long snakes like that, that's a sign of gerrymandering. It just is. And, you know, I've been through many redistrictings. Some of the maps I've supported, some I have not. But, you know, this particular bill, as I said, is not needed. This council, due to the amendment that I introduced, will be able to make changes to the map or adopt a totally new map. So we don't need the bill. And the statement was made, you know, that we're not going to have any other options in the future to redistrict. Well, every 10 years when there's a census, we'll be redistricting every 10 years. So that statement is absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. So, you know, this council is threatened all the time with lawsuits. And I've read through the ACLU's statement regarding 7024. I don't agree with them in several areas. And, you know, we're threatened all the time with lawsuits. I mean, we're a very litigious society. There's no doubt about that. And, you know, you got to stand for something. You can't let threats like that run you and run the decisions that you make. So again, I am not voting for this bill. Don't think it's necessary. And I guarantee everybody in this room and up here that we will have a redistricting committee. We will have members representing each council district. We will have public input meetings. And knowing the people up here as I do, and I say this for each and every one of them, we will produce a map that will be satisfactory to most everyone. I've already had people talk to me, I'd like to see this change and that change. And the reasons for the changes are good reasons. They aren't gerrymandering. They aren't partisan. So let's defeat this bill, move on, and let's work together as a council, work together so that we can produce the best council map. Of course, that's assuming that the 9-member council amendment passes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Katch. And Councilman Marks?
Thank you. Councilman Jones mentioned the school board change. I checked with our legislative council and that passed 6-0. Every one of us voted for that language. Every one of us here that night voted for that language. 6-0. Secondly, Councilman Catch, I thank you for pointing out the fact that there will be a redistricting process regardless. One that is, I will guarantee you, far more involved than the General Assembly's process. I'm not going to bemoan the point here because I think my colleagues have made a very clear distinction between the way we have tended to operate in a bipartisan manner and the way the General Assembly tends to operate. I'm just going to quote the report from Common Cause of Maryland, not exactly a conservative organization. This is from their report on redistricting. Quote, during the General Assembly special session, there was a floor debate in the Senate about the congressional map proposal. I have never seen a bill move so quickly. It went from a committee hearing and vote to third reader and passage on the floor within just a few hours. The map passed so quickly that no amendments were made in committee, even with a significant amount of public input that day. Ladies and gentlemen, the gerrymandering done by the General Assembly.
Okay, let me just make a point. So let me just say this. I don't think it's constructive for it to be an us against them, the county council or the General Assembly, how the General Assembly conducts its business, how we conduct our business. I think it's important for us to focus on how we conduct our business, this back and forth of how they did it, how we do it. If you think about it, if you look across the dais here, there's 7 members representing 850,000 people. We're perhaps the smallest governing body with the most representation across, in terms of each of us represent 120,000 people. So it's important for us to be strong as a governing body. And we don't have the luxury because we're only 7. I think other governing bodies, I think some 140 in the state house, and I think, 40-some senators, I don't know the exact numbers, 47, but we don't have the luxury of dysfunction because there's only 7. If one of us is dysfunctional, that's 17% of the body is not working correctly. If one of us goes radio silent and not communicating, that's 17% of us not talking to each other. If one of us doesn't show up for a legislative meeting, that's 17% of the representation of this county not participating in the legislative discussion. So it's important for us to show up for work. It's important for us to communicate in a constructive way and not pick at each other. And what I see happening here is us picking at each other, us becoming this 7-member dysfunctional body, mostly for people pushing and shoving for political gain. And we need to stop pushing and shoving for political gain and do our job right here for Baltimore County. Councilman.
I already spoke. Councilman Ertel.
Okay, Councilman Ertel.
Well, and Chair, you make a good point because I feel like this bill has done exactly that, and that's one of the reasons why I won't support it, because from the very beginning, it was designed to fracture the council by 2 council people who did not take part in the participation in the original bill. And let me recover what we did in 4724, just to give a little context, because I know there's some new people here that weren't at the last work session. The county council has, there was nothing in the charter when the government was set up in 1955 with the current government style. So in 1955, they came up with a county executive and 7 council people. The charter never addressed what would happen as the population of the county grew. And back in 1955, we were at 350,000 people. We are now at 845,000, 850,000 people. They have been talking about expanding the council sometime since 1978, and not one council has ever done anything about it. So we finally did something about it. Linda Dorsey Walker's here. She put together a coalition of people to try to do 11. We had a structure committee. They looked at 9, they looked at 11, they looked at keeping it at 7, and they looked at 13 districts. They came back with a recommendation to do 9. We decided to go with 9. I think many of us on the council weren't sure if we were going to get there because there was a few of us that didn't want any expansion at all. I have been for expansion since I've been a community person, and I'll give you a little more history here. Back in 2000, the NAACP came to the county and said, you know, you have 26% African-American population, but you have no African-American council people. So the county back then could have said, you know what, you're right. Why don't we expand the council? But they didn't. So what they did is they took Towson's district away and dumped it over on Liberty Road and created the 4th district over there. The 4th district used to be in Towson. Well, that was good in the sense that we have a African-American friendly candidate district, but it wasn't the right process then either. And we've been asked by different groups over the years to make the council more diverse, to give more opportunities for other voices to be on the council. And 9 certainly helps do that. And one of the things that we did, one of the things that gets created here is a 2nd African-American district. Ironically, the West Side delegates and senators seem to be frightened by that prospect somehow. I'm not sure why. We create a Essex Middle River district. Again, these districts were based on census tracts. We will have a commission going forward that will relook at this and decide what the districts actually end up being. So again, this bill is unnecessary, but it also drives a wedge into the council saying, you know, those of you who stood up to finally bring the county forward by adding just 2 districts, it doesn't matter because now we're going to punish you to make this sound like you've done something wrong. And Councilman Katch talked about being offended. I'm offended as someone who's worked 20 years as a community person, as a volunteer. I get on the council. One of the things I did is I championed this legislation, worked hard to get it done, and we just get blasted by not really community groups. We get blasted by the state legislature on this, who didn't come to any structure committee meetings, who didn't call us, didn't have an opinion until we passed a bill to expand the council. And the question here is, well, we don't like the map. Well, we have a commission that is going to look at the map and make changes as needed and get community input. So I'm still not clear as to why 7024 is necessary. And I'd also like to ask my colleagues, Councilman Young and Councilman Jones, if you'll state publicly who you believe gerrymandered this map. Was it me? Was it David? I mean, Councilman Jones said that the map was gerrymandered. That the map that we had as the baseline to decide, hey, what will these districts look like? What could they look like? And that's really all the map was there for.
Gerrymandering is defined by either using demographic groups or political groups to then draw a map depending on a district. So technically, we all gerrymandered it. Just the whole thing. It's gerrymandered regardless because we're using those key factors to draw the map. So
using census data and census tracts is gerrymandering?
in terms of a definition of gerrymandering, when you're taking a specific population, whether that be through, there's illegal forms and then there's the legal form being the one that if you're using political parties as the purpose for drawing a map, that is completely legal and gerrymandering. The illegal form is gerrymandering based on race, sex, and other aspects protected by the federal government. So the map is gerrymandered by definition. Just want to make sure you're clear of that.
Okay. I mean, were there a bunch of us smoking cigars in the back room coming
Mention
up?
cigars again, I don't think anybody's implied that.
Well, it sure feels that way.
I'm sorry you
It's
feel
like
that way.
we're being accused of doing something wrong when all we did was vote to expand the council.
Not sure who's accusing you of doing something wrong, other than the fact that this, I mean, I think collectively that we have not followed with the spirit of the charter, which includes and requires a process that has public input related to the drawing of a map.
And again, Councilman Young, you talk about a process. We did not have the luxury of time to create a process in order to have this on the ballot for 2026. And I've said this before, this isn't about me, but I'm a freshman councilman, so are you. It does not behoove me personally to change my district up a year and a half into my term to run in a different district going forward.
One more time.
But what I did and what I was part of was doing what's right for the county, which is adding diversity, which includes communities that in the past have been lumped in with other communities that don't necessarily have the same interest as them. And I just don't know where this is coming from, because it seems like a political stunt to.
It's been made clear from other members that, your opinion on what this is and what it isn't, whether it's I've never heard anybody describe the legislative process that's presented in front of us, that we're, as 7 members representing our own districts, as a way of whining about not getting your way. But I mean, to each their own, I guess. What I'm saying is that we didn't need to figure out a process for map drawing. That was already in the charter. We were under a timetable to get something on the referendum onto the ballot. That was very clear. And we used the recommendations from our work group to kind of influence that to make it possible. This whole thing from the beginning has been, and I've been pretty consistent about the fact that the map tied to it, which surprised to me in terms of it needing to be attached to it in the first place, wasn't going to be done through a commission process. I know through our own private conversations that, sure, it's inconvenient for us to leave it to a independent commission made up of citizens of Baltimore County to make a determination, and then we're at the whims of what that decision is. But it's not about our convenience. It's about what's fair to the folks that are going to be in those districts. So I'm not sure who's attacking you, but in terms of this process, the body shouldn't have been drawing a map in the first place. And nefarious things are whatever you want to imply. I don't know. This bill in front of us is about recognizing the fact that there is clear intent stated in the charter about how we can and can't do this, should and shouldn't do this. And I don't believe that we stuck to that through our language in the original bill.
But there is no language in the charter that addresses expanding the council and what you do then.
But it is about
the only thing that's in the charter is about the census when we redistrict every 10 years.
Sure.
It's the only thing that's in there. And again, it wasn't done for convenience. The map was put together to give people an idea of what 9 districts could look like.
That was my intent. That was my understanding too, until we tied it to the passage of the referendum in November. It is not just it is not an example of what could be. It is what they're voting for.
Right. And again, we're talking semantics here because
it's not semantics, sir.
Well, when we have a commission that's going to be formed, if this passes, and they're going to do that work.
I was going to say that I'm through this discussion, which is why I'm glad also that we all collectively agreed to change the rules. So there have been multiple opportunities to discuss this. The last work session, I think there was talk about the possibility of going to a commission, and now I'm glad to hear that the members of this council are sticking to and specifically stating that there'll be a commission.
Councilman, can I ask Mr. Bostwick? Mr. Bostwick, you and I had a discussion earlier today where I asked about the requirement under Councilman Katch's amendment that we passed what is the procedure moving forward should the voters approve expansion to 9? We are required to go through the charter mandated redistricting process, correct?
Correct.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that, please? Again, required, not that we may, we're required to do it.
So as Mr. Ertel indicated, currently the charter is silent as to expansion and what to do if there is expansion. However, if the ballot measure that is before the voters is approved to make certain changes to the county charter, 2 of the sections that will be changed are sections 206 and 207 of the charter. 206 currently states that the county is divided into 7 districts. Obviously, that will be changed. The change to 206 is that the county will now be divided into 9 districts. Another provision that was added to 206's language is revisions of council districts may only be enacted in accordance with section 207 of the charter and may only occur 1 before October 1, 2025, or after each decennial census of the United States, or upon ratification of amendments to the charter by the voters of the county to increase or decrease the number of districts. So if that charter change passes, revisions of council districts can only occur in accordance with 207 of the charter and the other part that I read. And then 207 of the charter is the revision of council districts. And 207, if approved by the voters as well, will state not later than March 1 of the year after each decennial census of the United States or the year after ratification of amendments to this charter to increase or decrease the number of districts, the county council shall establish by resolution a councilmanic redistricting commission. And then this section also goes through the number of members of the commission, which will now be each member having an appointment rather than the current number of 5 members, and that there will be public hearings and that they will recommend legislation to the county council as to how those districts will be constituted. And then in another section of section 207, it states that the county council shall then adopt by legislation a redistricting map adopted by at least a majority plus 1 of the council. So I guess what I'm trying to say by reading all of that is, yes, the council will be required, if these charter changes pass, to proceed through a redistricting process that is in accordance with section 2, with the new language in 207.
Thank you, Mr. Bostwick. That was a little bit longer explanation than I expected, but I think that is the point, that there is no, we may do it should the referendum pass. We shall do it, correct?
Yes, it does say shall.
Under 207, but 206 says may by October 1st.
It says that revisions of council districts may only be enacted in accordance with 207. So, and may only occur before October 1 of 25 or after each 10-year census. So those are the only circumstances that it can or may be done. But if it is going to be done, I mean,
right.
Let me get back up a little bit. The revisions may only be enacted in accordance with 207.
Right. And I'm glad that this body has now made it very clear since the beginning of this discussion that we shall engage in a commission process, even though we may do it in between the passage of the referendum and October 1st, while it is still completely up to us. Sometimes we can project what our decisions are going to be. It's good to hear from the members now that that is their intent to create that commission, that we may, based on the legislation that and the language we put into the referendum.
Councilman Jones.
Yes, I feel like, so that we all not get like totally lost, I just think it's important to bring us back to the issue at hand. So the issue at hand is there was a map. There was a desire by members on the council to expand the council. So I would imagine it sort of went like this. Hey, will you vote to expand the council? Why would we? Baltimore County is 2.5 times Democrats to Republicans. Why would we ever agree to expand the council when any redistricting commission is going to probably come up with a 9-member map, 9 Democrats to 3 Republicans? Why would we agree to that? So, or 6, so then someone on the other side, I'm assuming that it's either Councilman Patoka or Councilman Ertel, said to the Republicans, I tell you what, how about you draw the map? Why take a chance waiting for a redistricting commission to sort of come up with something you don't want? So why don't you draw the map? And a map was drawn. The map is significantly gerrymandered in a way that overwhelmingly guarantees Republicans 5 out of 9 or 4 out of 9 seats for years to come. And in fact, disenfranchises citizens of Baltimore County by choosing their winners and their losers before the ballots are ever cast. So now today, everyone is saying, well, we're going to redistrict anyway. If that's the case, then why don't we get rid of this map and start fresh since we're going to redistrict? Because it goes back to what I said. This map becomes law 30 days after the citizens vote for that council expansion. And then you can have all the redistricting commissions you want. You can have all the hearings you want. If you don't get 5 people to come up with something new after the redistricting commission submits their map, all you do is stonewall, and there's a very good chance the map standing will be the one that's in law that took place 30 days after it passed. So everybody's saying, oh, we're going to commission, we're going to redistrict, we're going to have a commission, we're going to do all the right things, trust us, trust us. Well, why don't we just clear the slate and make sure we start off with a clean slate with no map? Because then you will have participation. Now, many of my colleagues here were here when we did redistricting before. I made sure, as the chairman, that everyone was involved. I made sure that we didn't touch anyone's district without their consent, knowledge, and participation into what we were going to do. And it took a while, but that's what we did. In this process, it became clear that once the votes were secured from the Republican side of the council, there was no reason, no need to collaborate, discuss, work with, or anything else with the other council members. I'm speaking for myself, and I'm assuming I can speak for Councilman Young. He could talk for himself. So that's basically what happened. So let's not get caught up with blaming the General Assembly for gerrymandering or what this says or that says. The bottom line is this map takes place 30 days, had no input from the public, none. And this map will take effect, and it will be law and probably stay law if somebody doesn't prevail in a lawsuit or if we don't change it. But if you like what you have now, if this is the reason you voted for the expansion, you have no motivation at all to change it but so much.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. I know why you began your statement by saying, I would imagine this how it all went. And you would have to use your imagination because you did not participate in any of the meetings that you were asked to participate in. You didn't show up for the
Councilman
legislative
Batoka,
session. Let me
that's
finish.
not true.
So you had to use your imagination, and then you had to go out and present a false narrative that the map is somehow done in a way that didn't involve council members like yourself and other members along the dais, didn't have input. So I think it's unfair for you to say that, and it's a bit disingenuous. You have to show up to legislative sessions. You have to participate in meetings. You can't be a council member from the sidelines. You have to be engaged in working with your colleagues.
Councilman, I know you like to continue that narrative. And I think I made it very clear. I was stuck on an airplane where I thought that I was going to be able to log on and I could not. But the fact of the matter is, a map was generated. A map should not have been generated. A map was generated to secure the votes of the Republicans. And that's why we're fighting so hard today to somehow hold on to this map, because that was the map.
Then why are you fighting so hard against it? You can't stand the Democrats won't have a supermajority if the map works, this map works out the way that you think it is.
I just believe in free and fair elections.
Councilman, you and I are friends.
Absolutely.
Right? And we have our arguments and debates as well. Look, you don't get on the county council being a Republican or a Democrat. You get on the county council by declaring your candidacy, talking to your friends to see if they would support you, going out to community meetings. You know how to do it.
We just talked about this today.
We talked about it today. That's how you do it. You don't do it through maps. To Councilman Ertel's point, I'll be around in 2026. I'll have finished my third term. Do you think that I wanted to give up Essex in this new map, which is part of my base? No, I did not want to do that. But in your statements there, in your last few paragraphs, you sealed the point for me. What you guys don't like is you might not get a supermajority, because you haven't had a supermajority on the council since I got elected as the third Republican. Probably drives some of you Democrats nuts. Just saying.
Councilman Marks.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm done. I wish we would move on, actually, after
I will
Councilman
be
Marks.
super brief. So, Councilman Ertel, thank you for reminding us of your long history in this. I also have supported a 9-member map for quite a long time. I wrote an editorial in the Baltimore Sun on September 15, 2015, headlined, "A 9-member council will better serve Baltimore County." I got a lot of flack from Republicans for that. I think the 3 Republicans who voted for this ballot initiative have probably gotten some flack from our constituents, but I think it was the right thing to do. I just want to kind of bring this back to that night. And I'm going to read from the Baltimore Banner, because the Baltimore Banner really captured it well. In historic vote, Baltimore County Council advances measure to add 2 new members, July 1st, 2024. Charter amendment that would go before voters in November aims to bring more diversity to a council that's all male and nearly all white. And you're right, I was very proud of that vote. Very proud of that vote. Finally, just to respond to Councilman Jones, there are no guarantees in life. In fact, not one of these districts that's proposed in that map has a Republican majority. In every one of those districts, a good Democrat could beat a bad Republican. What the map does produce is competition, and hopefully we'll continue to have a bipartisan body. I hope we can get back to that, because that's why we function so well.
Councilman Ertel?
The only thing I'd like to add is Councilman Jones was not here the night of the vote, and what he doesn't know is that I think when we all walked up on this dais that night, we were absolutely not sure that it was going to pass. And so, again, to be accused of backroom deals, gerrymandering, colluding with the Republicans, you had to be here. And again, we went to, I think we stepped up, 2 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and finally expanded this council. And in the end, it'll be a good thing for Baltimore County, regardless of any criticism we're getting for this. And when the commission meets and puts together, gets all the input and puts together a map, I'm confident that we will vote on it because that's what we do. We do what's right for the county, and we will do it going forward. So I feel like 70-24 is kind of saying, well, we don't trust that we're going to do that, but we don't trust, either we don't trust each other here, or we do. And I think we've done a lot of good things, but this is why I say this is a wedge, because it's basically saying, and Councilman Young, you even said, you said the last work session, because Todd voted for it, because Councilman Crandall voted for it, there must be something wrong. You said that.
No, I did not.
You did say that.
No, I said it gave me pause.
I gave you pause, okay.
That is what I said, Councilman.
Councilman Katch?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that the night we voted on this bill, I can assure you we did not know the result, what it was going to be, because I was ready to vote against it unless the amendment that I introduced dealing with establishing the commission, public hearings, et cetera, was accepted by the council, because I was very concerned about the lack of transparency and openness. So we got that. I voted for it. And I think it was the right thing to do. And I am very optimistic. I know the 7 people up here, and I know that they will appoint the right people to this commission. And I know they all have open minds, and I know that they want to do what's right. Thank you.
Okay, do you have any additional comments? Or we're ready for public testimony. I think we're ready for public testimony. Ms. Belcastro, first speaker, please. And we're going to try to, while we didn't hold a good time limit up here, maybe the speakers can show a better example by being staying strictly to the time limit. I don't think any of us are going to see the Orioles game tonight, so let's try to be civil and stick to the time limit.
Our first speaker, Mr. Chair, is Sharonda Hoffman, who is here in person.
Ms. Hoffman, come on up.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Patoka and Council. Thank you for allowing me to address the public. My name is Sharonda Huffman, and I'm a resident of District 7. I live in Essex, and I noticed that councilman from District 7 was called the councilman from Dundalk. He also represents Essex, as he stated. I'm a community person, but I also have experience in creating legislation and working in government. The ballot issue is not about the General Assembly versus Council. You all represent us. And why does it matter if you start from scratch, except for ego and hurt? Honestly, they say women are emotional, but this is probably why we need women on council, because we really need to think about how are we going to do the best thing for the people? How do we have transparency? How do we tell people, hey guys, we have a new map. Let me tell you about this in our districts. I'm not a delegate. I'm not a senator. I'm just a citizen. And I have never gerrymandered. Does that make my opinion more valid? If the General Assembly did gerrymandering, they were wrong too. Today, Councilman Koch guaranteed there will be a commission and the map may change. We are just supposed to trust you. Why technically you cannot guarantee anything? I'm a person that believes in God, and God's in control, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. When I asked my councilman in 7 to have meetings in Essex and Dundalk to explain to his constituents what was happening, I was told by his staffer, Doug Anderson, quotes, the council has no more influence over the expansion. It will now be up to voters in November to decide whether the charter is updated to reflect what was passed. The deadline for the ballot initiatives is August 1st. Even if the council were to take a bill today to further amend, it wouldn't go to vote till September or October. Well, here we are. And my community still doesn't know what's happening, and I'm the person that has to explain it to them. So the least you could do is repeal all this extra stuff you added to the bill, and let's just vote on the first two things. If you're going to redo the map anyway, why do you need a fake map that's going to change? Just get rid of it, and let's do the right thing for the people instead of worrying about how it made you feel and how somebody hurt your feelings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Sheila Ruth, who is here in person.
Delegate Ruth.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the council. For the record, my name is Sheila Ruth. I live in Council District 1. I am here in support of my Councilman's Bill 70-24. I want to thank you for having me here today. So I want to first say, I've known most of you for a long time, and I want to start from a place that I assume you're all trying their best to do the right thing. And we may disagree on what that is, but I don't think anyone is smoking cigars in a back room. I think you're trying to do the right thing. However, I think that Bill 47-24 was not the right thing. And my problem with it, the process is the problem, not the map. The map, I have my own opinions about the map, but I am not here because of the map. When I found out that there was, and let me back up and say, I supported the For More for Baltimore County petition drive. I supported it from the beginning, which was, I believe, 2021 or 2022, and even collected signatures door to door back then at the beginning. I supported it because I think it's very important to expand the council, not only for the numbers, but for representation. A larger council will give greater opportunities for representation. And let's face it, no offense to any of you, but this is not a very diverse council in a county which is very diverse and becoming increasingly diverse. So while I think 4 more is better than 2 more, I supported the idea of expanding by 2 more until I found out 2 days before you voted on 47-24 that there was a map included in it. I found that out on Saturday, June 29th. On Sunday, June 30th, I had not looked at the details of the map. I had no idea what the partisan or the racial makeup of the map was. It was just the idea that a map was drawn in a very compressed timeline by council members and council staff without a public outreach process and a redistricting commission as defined in the charter. And I recognize that you have public outreach for the bill, but most people didn't even know, most people in the county didn't even know that this was happening, much less that there was a map included in it. So I found out 2 days before you voted there was a map. Not knowing anything about what was in the map, on Sunday, June 30th, I texted all 3 council members whose districts overlap mine and said, please don't include a map in this, please. So it was the process. There needs to be a redistricting commission. There needs to be a public process, not just the normal process of bills, but special public outreach, preferably in the communities. Nobody came to my community over this map. Nobody came even anywhere on the west side of Baltimore. And I do want to thank Councilman Cash for your commitment to transparency and openness. But I think if the map is going to be redone anyway, then why does it have to be in this bill? And if you're required to have a redistricting commission, you're not required to vote for the map that the redistricting commission proposes. You can vote for any map, including this one, and inertia, I think, is most likely to make this one the map that passes. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair,
Councilman Crandall.
if I may, and I promise you, I'm not going to respond to every person who testifies tonight. So, Delegate, thank you for being with us tonight. My question to you, not to mix apples and oranges on different issues, but you stated you were sort of blindsided with, oh no, there's a map. Okay, well, have you looked at the map? The map's not that bad. It's contiguous. It's based on population. Anyway, you found out about it late with no one coming to your community to tell you about it. Did anyone in the General Assembly, when they voted to take my land use authority away from me at Fort Howard, did any of those members of the General Assembly, aside from the members of the 6th Legislative District, did they come to our community and say, we're going to allow affordable housing at Fort Howard in your district, and put it in a piece of legislation at the last minute to obfuscate the county council's land use authority? No, I had to find out about it before I could even do anything about it. It's just how life works. You got 7 now, opportunity to go to 9. For God's sake, take the win.
Councilman Ertel?
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know what bill you're referring to on Fort Howard. We have maybe 1,000 bills every year, but
we're busy too.
I recognize that, Councilman. I'm not saying that for every bill you need to come to my community, but for redistricting, it's very important. And the General Assembly Legislative Redistricting Commission did have public hearings in various parts of the state. I remember the one in Baltimore County.
Councilman Ertel?
Yes, thanks, Delegate Ruth, for speaking, and points are well taken. One of the reasons why we wanted to at least look at a map was there was a push. Can we create an easily recognizable second African-American friendly district? And that was one of the reasons why this map, we kind of had to look at that. Where would that be? Can we create it? And how would that all go? So that was one of the exercises that got put into this. It would have been nice, and it would have been nice to have had a commission to talk about all this beforehand. The problem with that would have been, and we all knew this, it was, we talked about this. Should we slow this down, and should we wait till 2030 to do it? Maybe we should have. But we wanted to do it sooner. We knew we were going to create 2 empty districts at some point. And we also did not want new candidates to come in 2030, because we have to redistrict every 10 years. So if we waited to 2030, you would have new candidates elected if we expanded the council in 2030 instead of 26. Then their districts would have changed again the very next election. So the thought process here for going to 26, and again, it wasn't politically advantageous to, I don't think any of us, to do it for 26, other than we thought it was the right thing to do to get the ball moving, and we felt like this was the council to actually expand the council. I don't know if that would happen after 26. So it would have been nice to have had a big discussion and public hearings about it. We did that in the structure committee. Now, we didn't talk about maps, but we talked about expansion of the council in that venue. And like I said, I'm confident that we will go through that process. This leaves a baseline map. We know whatever we've done, we've created a second African-American district on the west side, and we've created an Essex Middle River district that we have a waterfront that, has needs that are different, just like North County. And having a district like that is important, I think, for the people that live down there. And they've had a lot of people that have moved to that area as well. So again, there were some things that we were trying to work out to figure out, is this a viable thing that we can all get behind?
Councilman Marks?
Thank you. Delegate Ruth, I'm going to say something very nice about you. No, seriously, you have been coming here quite a bit before you were ever a delegate. You sat in that chair and you implored us to adopt public financing for campaigns. And it was a bipartisan vote. Councilman Katchen and I voted for it, and it is now a reality. So I want to thank you for that. And you've always struck me as someone who I think believes in good government. I want to give you a chance to kind of respond to some of the things we've said very briefly about the General Assembly. You do understand why there is so much suspicion up here when state legislators come and talk about map making, and then I read something from Common Cause that talks about that process. It's not a perfect process by any stretch, correct?
Thank you so much for your kind words, Councilman. I really appreciate that. I voted on the maps from the General Assembly, and my votes are a matter of public record. I was not involved in the drawing of those maps, so I have no personal knowledge of that whatsoever. I think that no matter what the maps are, we can disagree on those maps, but that there needs to be a process, and that process needs to include public input.
So the reason why it's important, and I remember thinking the same thing after the 2010 census, is that when Baltimore County is split into 3 or 4 different districts, it dilutes our influence, it dilutes our power. And it's a shame. So I think there is a reason for us to be bringing this up, not just because you're here. But I did want to thank you for coming, and thank you for your long work on behalf of good government.
Thank you, Councilman.
And Mr. Chair, just quickly, Delegate Ruth, the bill that I was referring to was House Bill 538, of which you were a sponsor.
Thank you, Councilman. I thought you meant one specific to Force Howard. I know which one you're talking about now. Thank you.
Right. It was a last-minute amendment to it that specified without naming the property. And the bill in and of itself still, again, I hate to be so adversarial. I guess I'm from Dundalk, it just comes out naturally. But that bill circumvented the county council's land use authority. And I don't recall hearing about it from anybody in the General Assembly. And certainly not after one particular property was called out to take away the council's land use authority on it. Not one person from the General Assembly, except for the 6 legislative team that I reached out to, did I hear from anything about it. So it goes both ways.
Councilman, I can appreciate that, and I'm sorry that you didn't hear anything about it. But the Maryland Association of Counties did support that bill after an extensive negotiating period with the governor. There were provisions put in specifically for MACO. There were also, I believe, various local representatives, council members who testified for or against the bill. So there really was a lot of testimony on that, and we did end up amending the bill based on some of the concerns.
We can debate all night. I love it.
Agreed, Councilman.
Thank you, Delegate.
You have to take that offline, and we're going to go to Councilman Katz.
Yeah, Sheila, just to lighten this up.
It's okay.
Sheila. Okay. You spent quite a bit of time recording me in 2018. Did you make a movie about me? If you did, could I have a copy of it?
I don't remember that, Councilman, but I don't think I still have those videos if I did.
You what?
I don't know if
You didn't delete them, did you?
I don't remember, Councilman, sorry.
Okay. If you find them, please do your movie. Okay, thanks.
Okay, let me just make a couple of comments. One, I want to just piggyback on what Councilman Ertel said about the possibility of adding additional districts that might be favorable to a minority candidate. But I also want to say, by going to 9, let it not be forgotten that it also creates 2 more opportunities for a woman to win elections, so that we have gender diversity. Right now we have 7, and while it's close to a 50-50 chance, if you go to 9, you certainly have 2 additional opportunities for a woman to win election and create greater diversity. Secondly, it's interesting that we moved on to public finance and how that, I think Councilman Marks brought that up, because that was truly a bipartisan effort and very similar. Interestingly enough, it was very similar to the bill we have in front of us, and both 4724 and also 7024, because that was bipartisan. Not all the Democrats voted for public finance, and not all the Republicans voted for public finance. It was, I think it was 5-2. So it was a 5-2 vote. And so we were able to move beyond that because we were trying to be functional as a governing body. And it's a theme I'm going to press for the rest of the evening, that we need to be functional. And let me just finally say, Delegate Ruth, that I admire your values because you are who you are. For example, you said in your testimony that you supported the 4 More initiative from the very beginning, because that's who you are. You believe in things and then you move forward with it. You didn't jump on the 4 More initiative at the very end because you thought it was a political, it gave you political advantage. You did it because you believed in it. You believed in growing the council, not just to 9, but by 11. So I commend you for taking your belief and acting on that belief that you could make change in Baltimore County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, thank you, Delegate Ruth, and I think we're going to stay with elected officials now. So, Ms. Belcastro, next speaker.
Mr. Chair, our next speaker is Christopher West, who is here in person.
Okay, Senator West.
Me, Mr. Chair.
No, no worries. I'm here to help.
Good evening, and thank you. Ouch. Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak briefly. I signed up on this bill as neutral because I don't want to try to encourage you to vote one way or the other on this bill. I came here this afternoon to share my view as to how you should approach the voting. So during my 10 years in Annapolis, I've become known as the most bipartisan legislator in Annapolis. I've made it my business not to take partisan positions on issues when possible to avoid them. I'm the only Republican in many cases who's voted with the Democrats on a bill. Similarly, on many of my bills, no Republicans support my bills, and I get them passed by getting Democratic support. I practice what I preach, which is bipartisanship. As the years have gone on, my partisan juices have sort of leaked out. In the 10 years I've been in Annapolis, I've passed over 80 bills. That's way more than any other Republican legislator and more than most Democratic legislators. And I've been able to do this because I roll up my sleeves and I work shoulder to shoulder with people on the other side of the aisle. Not once during this period, not once have I been accosted by a constituent and accused of not being partisan enough. My constituents, I believe, want people to practice bipartisanship and to reach across the aisle and to work together in order to pass legislation that's in the interest of everyone. And I think most of my voters believe that if the parties do work together, better legislation is going to result than if one party lords it over another. So my message this afternoon is to urge this council to embrace any and all opportunities to work together across party lines on these issues. And that's my message.
Thank you, Senator West. Councilman Marks?
Senator, job well done. You are the gold standard, and I want to thank you for your service.
When I retire in 2 years, I'm going to be able to think back proudly on my career because I've practiced what I've preached. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Councilman Young.
Senator West, it was a pleasure to work with you in the House. And
yes, it was.
Work with you when you moved to the Senate. All I wanted to say was I just wanted to confirm your own assessment.
My what?
Confirm your own assessment. You are known as one of the most bipartisan and fair members of the Senate and when you were in the House as well. So I appreciated working with you and look forward to continuing to be an ally.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator West, for bringing harmony to our group. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Senator Charles Sydnor, who is here in person.
Senator Sydnor. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to see the time, but you cannot. Anyway, I am Senator Charles Sydnor. I represent District 44. I'm also the chair of the Baltimore County Senate delegation. but today I am here as a resident of Baltimore County. And I'm before you today to express my support for Council Bill 7024. At its initial hearing, there was much to do about my colleagues coming before the council to testify in support of this bill. The rhetoric from on this council and some of the witnesses was somewhat surprising, so much that I wanted to be clear that people who support the expansion of the county council, like me, are not outsiders, as some witnesses claim, nor are we from Annapolis. We pay our taxes right here in good old Baltimore County. We're Baltimore County residents, and we have opinions. We are your neighbors. We are merely exercising our First Amendment right to petition our local government for a redress of our grievances. I do not think our being here should be seen as an affront to any of you, nor should it be seen as us trying to tell you what to do. We're just doing what citizens do. I want to thank my councilman, Pat Young, for introducing this bill, as well as Councilman Jones and Patoka for co-sponsoring the legislation, which I believe strikes at the most objectionable sections included in Council Bill 4724. I'd also like to thank Councilman Cash for co-sponsoring the amendments to Council Bill 4724 because he believed the process was not open and transparent. The councilman clearly stated that his intent was to have a commission appointed, and I agree with that, and I've been pleasantly surprised at hearing the dialogue about where things were going to stand, because honestly, when one reads the way Section 207 reads, it's not exactly clear to me, and I'm an attorney, what was going to happen and what this commission was going to be charged with. So when you all are telling us that they're going to have this opportunity to do what commissions have done in the past, that heartens me. Because again, when I read this legislation, it says the commission may only recommend to the county council legislation to increase or decrease the number of councilmanic districts if this commission is constituted, and I'm assuming by this ballot measure. So that was somewhat confusing, or not clear, I should say, to me. And it raises a number of questions. And even tonight, as I sat here listening to you all talk, I had a number of questions. And Councilman Jones, I think, touched on some of them. If you have a map that's already been passed by this council, what does that mean for the commission? What do they do with that map? Do they start from scratch? If you all have any questions about gerrymandering, I have some answers. And if you have questions about the school board, I also have some statements to make there. But with that, I will probably close. But if I might, just in terms of gerrymandering, because I thought this was really important for Councilman Cash. It was a 2019, I think it was the Rucho versus Common Cause decision that many of you were talking about. And in that case, Chief Justice John Roberts of our U.S. Supreme Court declared partisan gerrymandering claims non-justiciable, which means that you can't take them to court. Legally, they're okay. You can partisan gerrymander. Many of the people who commented about gerrymandering, I don't think anybody appreciates gerrymandering. And that's why I, in the past, I've supported the Freedom to Vote Act at the congressional level. It has to be done. I don't think it's good for anybody. In fact, what it does is it just creates more and more partisan divide instead of having people working together and looking at themselves as part of one singular community. So I agree with you. Might I, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go right ahead.
Just in terms of the council, if it's all right with the Board of Education, I just wanted to mention, because I know council was asked about what the bill did, and I think Councilman Marks, who was the sponsor of the amendment, he asked, does the bill order the Maryland General Assembly to do anything? And the answer was no. And the text was partially read lines 6 through 8. But I think if one continues with the portion of the text which states that what the content of the written notification should include, it clearly states that written notification should convey a message that a certain part of the education's article is to be amended. And in our English language, we've been taught that there are 4 kinds of sentences: a declarative, exclamatory, imperative, and interrogatory sentence. In imperative sentences, they deliver instructions, commands, and requests. The state's education article is to be amended. This is clearly an imperative sentence. And I would say that if the council desired to convey information or statement, I believe Mason's legislative manual would suggest that a resolution declaring the body's position would have been the most appropriate and would have been received differently by me and my colleagues. Thank you for allowing me to continue.
Thank you. Councilman Marks?
Yes, Senator Sidner, I'll give you the same opportunity I gave to Delegate Ruth. You mentioned the Supreme Court cases, but I want to bring up the Court of Appeals decision in March of 2022. And the Court of Appeals struck down the congressional map that was passed by you and your colleagues in the legislature. Lynn Battaglia, who was on the Court of Appeals, who I believe was a staffer for Barbara Mikulski, wrote the following: the 2001 congressional plan is unconstitutional and subverts that will of the governed. So let's be clear, the courts did overturn the map that was passed in the last redistricting, correct? Now, do you have any views on redistricting reform at the state level?
Again, as I stated, I think the more and more you gerrymander, the more and more you're going to have partisan districts. And you have people to the far extremes. I think most people like to manage somewhat towards the middle of the political line. In terms of suggestions, honestly, I'd have one voting rights bill that I will be introducing. But it has more to do with when our local governments go beyond their bounds and ensuring that citizens don't have to rely on private counsel to have legal redress. So, no, you're right. We don't always get it right. Obviously, the court thought we got it wrong. Similarly, when I was a plaintiff and we sued Baltimore County, the court found that you all got it wrong. So it happens, you take your lumps and you move on, you learn from them.
The map that was finally adopted, I believe the legislature and Governor Hogan agreed on that map, did produce much more competitive districts. In fact, the 6th congressional district in Western Maryland right now is a toss-up. The map is much fairer, and I would argue that the map that has been proposed by 5 of us produces battleground districts where good candidates of either party can win, as opposed to maps where that have a preordained destiny. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, I like Delegate Ruth saw the map late. I didn't have a chance to really look at it when it initially came, which is why, again, I can appreciate the good councilman's amendment attempting to bring transparency to the entire process so that these things could be vetted, so that one could listen to opinions on both sides. Like I said, coming here tonight, it was enlightening listening to the conversations that you all had. The public isn't there, so we don't know what you've talked about was expected. But I will say what I also heard was some self-congratulations about creating 2 black districts. But then what I also heard was that the maps were created to create an example as to what could be done. So that somewhat confused me. So again, I hope that whatever happens tonight, you continue to get out and make things clearer to your constituents, because now, as Councilman Jones noted, legally you all have passed a map. And it is not clear to me what happens with that map when this commission that is required by charter moves forward.
Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Senator Sidnor. I appreciate you coming here to testify, and we certainly appreciate your words and your perspectives. And I'm just going to try my best to walk through this really fast. I'm going to ask our County Attorney, Mr. Benjamin, the map that was created, what happens to that map 30 days after the charter amendment is passed, if it is passed?
That map would become adopted.
And then if a redistricting commission is made after that, and a redistricting commission does not come up with a change, or there is no 5 votes to make such a change, what happens then?
That map would be the adopted map would be the current, would be the map that would stand.
Thank you very much.
And that's what concerns me.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Councilman Young, sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Senator, and we've been talking up here too about, and I know I have, about the charter and what it states related to our own process with an independent commission. I mean, I might ask some leading questions here when we've talked about or it has been talked about the legislature and how a map was produced that was then sent to the courts and then, sent back to then be redone. And Councilman Marks's point is more competitive, arguably more so, and created by Governor Hogan through a process that the legislature also goes through. Not that, you're an expert, but also going through it. I mean, there's the public hearing process that begins after the census, and then there's the redistricting advisory committee that's been created.
Correct.
And then that recommendation is sent to the governor.
Correct.
And then the governor sends it to the legislature for then adjustments, approval, and comment.
Correct.
Which sounds very familiar to the fact that the legislature has a final say, just as we do. And as you all haven't gotten it right, neither have we. In our own process that we try our best. I don't think anybody would say that they're perfect, but we have a process so that we have at least something to back up to and say that this provided the public and ourselves a backstop to how we got to a final product. And then the courts are in place to do their job. And if they determine that to be unfair or violate the law, then it's up to the legislative side to then fix it. It seems that has worked consistently as well as with us. I just wanted to make sure that they're clear that there is an absolute process related to a map that gets to you before it's approved and then determined to be unconstitutional, then having to be readjusted.
That is correct.
I appreciate it, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, no additional questions? Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much for your time, you all.
Ms. Belcastro, our next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Josh Sines, who is here in person.
Ms. Belcastro, apparently Mr. Sines is not here. Let's go. Next speaker, please.
I'll move on to the next speaker. The next speaker is Greg DeHoff, who is here in person.
Mr. Sines can't speak. Mr. Parnell Glenn, who's his vice president, had signed up. He has a community meeting at 6:15. He's been waiting since 4. So I'm just bringing that to your attention.
Perhaps after Mr. DeHoff. He is the next speaker. Welcome, Mr. DeHoff.
Good afternoon, Chairman Patoka and council members. Let me say this much. I've probably rewritten as much of my speech or what I was going to say as you guys were talking as I did before. I've taken a bunch of stuff out. Just a couple comments from me. I'll be very quick. First of all, from the last work session and this work session regarding Bill 7024 and the original Bill 4724, as they were discussed, from my perspective, it's become apparent that the council members are not communicating at a level that they should, especially prior to a meeting. It seems like a lot of that debate's here. Some of that needs to happen, but there needs to be discussions ahead of time. And that's my take on this. The second portion I'd like to say is that as it was stated during the last working session, that this bill appears to be a bait and switch. So there was a bill voted on, 4724 was voted on, without it even being in play at this point, okay, because it hasn't been ratified. We want to change the bill. We don't even know what it's doing. And there's lots of debate up here that no one seems to know what it's doing. So how is the constituents of Baltimore County supposed to trust a council that keeps changing things after it's put in play and been voted on. We don't know who's voting on what and what's actually going to be. And it's not, the changes have not been ratified at this point in time. That's all that I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. DeHuff. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Pernell Glenn, who is online. Mr. Glenn, you may begin your testimony.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Baltimore County Council. My name is Pernell Glenn. I'm the Vice President of the Essex Middle River Civic Council. We are an umbrella organization, a group representing many communities in Essex Middle River. The Essex Middle River Civic Council had unanimously voted to support the new District 8 and its boundaries established in Bill 4724, and respectfully ask for your reconsideration in this matter. The new district encompasses almost the entirety of the geographical area of the Essex Middle River Civic Council's area. We believe holding complete communities together under one district best serves the needs and wants of the communities. For the first time, this created a true waterfront district for Baltimore County. Historically, the eastern Baltimore County waterfront has been split among several districts. Placing it together under one district allows a comprehensive representation of a unique communities in the area, along with the waterfront restaurants and marinas, and more specifically, our way of life. The waterfront should be promoted and protected for the future generations to enjoy this very special geographic and environmental treasure. Thank you for your consideration on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, Pernell.
Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Peter Richkes, who is here in person.
Ms. Richkes.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Council. For the record, my name is Peter Richkes, and I live in West Housen. I believe Bill 7024 is needed. Bill 4724 violates charter requirements for redistricting. Even County Attorney Benjamin offered in the last work session that there was no legal rationale to put the cart before the horse by drawing a new district map without any real public discussion. Adding the veneer of public participation after the fact by approving the amendment to Bill 4724, introduced at the very last minute, also without any public review or real opportunity for discussion, is not a real remedy. The measures called for in Bill 7024 are the minimum to rectify the situation. Removal of the map drawn outside of both the charter requirements and the requirements of open meeting laws. As to the change in the composition of the school board called for in Bill 4724, that was already stripped from the ballot measure by the County Board of Elections. As it stands, the map in Bill 4724 would be imposed on the vast majority of county residents without their knowledge. The evidence of this is the case that the ballot measure itself, there is no mention of the fact that the reference Bill 4724 includes an already drawn map. There is no mention of even the amended remedial public participation process. For the voters, this would be the bait and switch. The fact that ballot question A is silent on these two key elements is basically a failure to disclose. If this were a real estate transaction and in another life, I was a licensed real estate agent. Such a transaction would be considered fraudulent representation that would render the sale null and void and leave the participating agents subject to legal actions and penalties. How is this consistent with open and transparent government? Well, I can appreciate the sense of commitment to the deal struck, some may feel. It's a bad deal that violates the Federal Voting Rights Act. Thus, it is bad law. The goal is to expand the council. Passage of Bill 7024 would make the law consistent with the language of question A. The council has taken this kind of...
You can continue.
Thank you. And by the way, the timer's not facing me, so I don't know what the time is. The council has taken this kind of corrective action before. It wasn't that long ago that the council took corrective action on what became the Bring Your Own Bag Act in February 2023. I urge the council to pass Bill 7024. Thank you.
Ms. Ritkus, I have two questions, one question and one comment. Could you elaborate on your view that there was a violation of the Open Meetings Act?
As was described in the last work session, and in my discussion with my councilman, Mike Ertel, I believe you described the process as meeting with a couple of council members and then another couple of council members and then another couple of council members. I'm sure that this was for the convenience of the members and their schedules, but it does not comply with open meetings law when such an important topic is being discussed.
Mr. Benjamin, could you define what constitutes a violation of the Open Meetings Act as it pertains to the Baltimore County Council?
Well, there's a lot of layers to that. First, there has to be a public body, and then there also would need to be a quorum in order to be able to get within open meetings. That's two of the requirements for open meetings, sir.
Okay. So in no case there were meetings set up, absolutely. And I met with, and I'll just say it again, I met initially with Councilman Ertel and Councilman Young. I believe them. The reason I met with them first is because I thought that they were both supporters and we would talk through what the issues were related to growing the council from 7 to 9. I had a second meeting a day or two later, and actually it was one day, and Justin, you can remind me because you set these up. It was one day after another because we had a really tough deadline in order to meet the timeline to get it onto the ballot for November 26th. So I had a second meeting with Councilman Catch and Councilman Marks and went through their perspective on how to grow the county council. And then I had a third meeting that I tried to set up with Councilman Crandall and Councilman Jones. And I left that one for last because I believe both of them to be firm that they did not want to grow the council in any way. So I thought once I was able to get a sentiment from my colleagues Ertel and Young, and then a sentiment from Councilman Catch and Councilman Marks, then I could try to work with Councilman Jones and Councilman Crandall to get them off of keeping the council at 7 and how do we grow it. That meeting didn't happen for a variety of reasons. We tried to schedule it. It was a tight time frame, but in no way was there an intent to violate the Open Meetings Act. As chair of the council, I take great pride in not violating that act. But in order to move an initiative as important as this forward, I thought it prudent to speak to council members and work with the first two I thought were full supporters, the next two, Councilman Marks and Councilman Catch, who I think they can be on board. And then if we got 4 on board and myself, then we could try to bring Councilman Jones and Councilman Crandall in so we'd have a unanimous support. Didn't work out as I had planned, but that was the intent, and there was no intent to violate the Open Meetings Act. And there was never a quorum.
I can appreciate the need to have a deliberative process and private discussions, but you put together a map, you decided on a map,
But that's
then
not what we're talking about now,
and
Ms.
then-
Rich, because we're talking about the council's ability to be nimble. And sometimes, yeah, we could not have any discussion. And then, as I think one of the speakers said, it sounds like you bring it all out here. But we need to have to be a professional governing body with 7 members. Remember, the planning board, 15 members. School board, 15 members. Every other board has some ability to have discussion without reaching a quorum. For us, there's only 7. That means if we have 4, we can't have any discussion. And I appreciate that and I respect that, but we have to be nimble enough for an important issue like this to have some candid discussion to move Baltimore County out of 1956. We do not want to be parked in front of 1956 with 7 members as we move into 2030. And so we took an approach that I thought was nimble, I thought was practical, I thought was a way to get something. Remember, government moves slow. We needed to move fast. And if we move slow as government moves, we'd be another 70 years before we move to 9 members. And that's too long. Our grandchildren won't even be there. It'll be their grandchildren. So anyhow, I just want to say that I take exception to your suggestion that, that there was a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
I understand your point.
Okay, thank you.
I don't agree. Thank you. Any other questions?
Councilman Ertel?
So, Peter, so what you're saying is because 2 council people or 3 council people talked, we've somehow violated the Open Meetings Act?
That's not the main point,
But that's what you're accusing us. You're coming up here and saying we violated because 2 of us talked, 3 of us sat in a room and talked. When you violate the Open Meetings Act, it's when we have a quorum together and we don't let the public know and we don't allow the press to potentially come in if they want to. But we have conversations all the time among 2 or 3 of us, and that's not, we're not sitting around again making deals. It's just trying to get a consensus of, is this a viable, some of the things we're talking about, are they viable going forward as a bill, or what can we agree on, or what do you disagree with? Maybe we can work this all out before we get in front of the public. But what you're saying is that you're kind of going a step further. I just went through open meetings training at MACO in the summer, and there was nothing about, well, if you take 2 of you out and talk, that you violated me. It's when you have a quorum or when all 7 of us are together and we decide to talk about a piece of legislation.
I also suggested that the result of your deliberations may also be a violation of the Federal Voting Rights Act. We can be on different sides of the table on any of these issues.
But you're inserting an opinion on something that is a legal matter, and you're just saying that we violated the act, and we did not.
Just as council people have said that I support gerrymandering and that I didn't do anything about what the legislature in Annapolis did without knowing the facts. That's their statement. That's their opinion. That's my opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Matriscus. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Our next speaker, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm trying to catch up. Our next speaker is Leah Bittinger, who is online. There we go. Ms. Bittinger, you are unmuted and you may begin your testimony.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Leah Bittinger, and I am speaking on behalf of the Sussex Community Association in Essex. Our community wishes to express concerns over recent efforts by a couple of members of the council to rescind the approved map for redistricting should the council expand following approval of the pending ballot initiative this November. Bipartisan and politically neutral maps are essential for fair elections and to ensure a level playing field. The maps we currently have on the table are fair. In fact, a majority of you previously voted and believe that to be the case. I'll make my comments short and simple. I'll even make them musical because sometimes music helps you to remember better. In the words of the great John Lennon, speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be, let it be. I'm whispering words of wisdom to you, let it be. Thank you, Council.
Ms. Bittinger, I thought for sure you were going to sing that.
Well, I wanted to, but I think that we've been, we're in enough shock right now, 2.5 hours into the meeting. I figured I would save your ears. But if
All
you'd
right,
like me to sing, I will.
What do you say, Ms. Belcastro? Ms. Belcastro saying yes.
Belcastra's going to say, she's going to sing it. Ms. Bittinger is a constituent of mine, and I know her quite well. I'm going to make a motion that we pass on the singing.
Okay, there you have it. Ms. Belcastro,
All right.
next singer, please.
Our next speaker or singer is Eric Rockel, who is here in person.
Mr. Rocco, if you feel like you want to sing through your testimony, feel free to do so. The Eagles, okay, wow. Taking it easy, Mr. Rocco.
I will take it easy, Mr. Chairman. Good
Mr. Rocco.
afternoon. Good afternoon, members of the council. I speak in opposition to Bill 7024. A wise man once said that one of the key ingredients to a successful legislature is the element of trust between the legislators. I would go so far as to expand that thought and say the element of trust must also obviously exist between the constituents and the legislators. Bill 7024 would seek to undo certain compromises between legislatures that led to the passage of Bill 4724 by a supermajority of 5 votes. Now, if those assurances and compromises are undone by the passage of Bill 7024, that element of trust will be tarnished, if not destroyed, leading to the disintegration of trust in the future on the council. I would caution the council for that reason and urge you not to pass it. Further, as I said at the last work session, the trust between the voters and the legislators will be harmed because Bill 7024 will be viewed as another case of bait and switch legislation, not unlike the watering down of the APFO legislation that the public saw earlier this summer. For these reasons, I urge you to vote against Bill 7024. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rocco. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Mr. Rockwell, thanks for being on the council structure committee too, by the way.
We have 2 members.
Our next registered speaker was Makita Scott, and she registered that she would be on virtually, but I do not see her on our attendee list.
Okay.
So I will go on to the next speaker. If she comes on, I will come back to her.
Go to the next one.
And then our next speaker would be Sean McIntosh, who I do
Sean
not
here.
see on our list.
She's
either.
here.
Oh, she's in person. Okay. It says virtually on the registration. That's okay. That's okay.
Good evening, Council Chair Patoka and members of the County Council. I'm Sean McIntosh. I live in Sparks, Maryland. I'm a District 3 resident. I've actually spent nearly 20 years in District 1 as well, and I want to commend you, Councilman Young, for introducing so many pieces of legislation that increase transparency. And that is what a true public servant is supposed to do, represent all of their residents. And it is about transparency and resident input. And that's the main reason I support your bill. I honestly believe that there wasn't a process there was definitely a process for the expansion. I testified for expansion. I believe in expansion. I actually wanted voters to be able to vote for 9 or 11 seats. I didn't get that amendment. We got 9 seats. But you have so much in that referendum that it will confuse voters. Just let them vote on whether or not to expand to 9 people. Councilman Koch, I appreciate the amendment that you put in because I think that you innately are a very fair council person and you wanted it to be fair, and that map is not a fair map. I listened to the comments on the September 10th work session and today's work session, and you complain about the gerrymandering at the state level. Gerrymandering is wrong. I agree with you 100%. It is wrong. It should never happen. This map is gerrymandered. And Councilman Marks, I appreciate what you said about there not being any council district on here that is heavily one way or another. Untrue. I'm a 2023 Emerge graduate. They train Democratic women to run for office. I have been intending to run for District 3. I know you know that, yes. I've been intending to run for District 3. It was a very fair district. Slightly more Democrats than Republicans, actually, who have constantly elected Councilman Koch. A Republican. All of you were elected in districts that were predominantly Democrat. By a slight margin, maybe, but mostly Democrat, with enough independents to allow a Republican to be elected. The way that the new District 5 is drawn, there are nearly 20,000 less Democrats now, and it will be impossible for a Democrat to win. I will still run, and I know it is a near impossible task, and I will still run. However, you have definitely stacked it against me. It is gerrymandered, and that is why I support this bill.
Thank you, Ms. McIntosh. Councilman Jones?
Yes, Ms. McIntosh, thank you so much for your testimony, and I certainly appreciate you highlighting District 3. You know, sometimes we sit here and, you know, you get tired of sort of going back and forth all the time, so you have to let things go. So when somebody says, well, you know, there's no heavily Republican district, sometimes you gotta let it go. But clearly, if you look at the map, there's an arm that reaches up from District 2, sort of shaped like this. It grabs 20 or 30,000 Democrats from District 3.
Right here.
There you go. And bring those Democrats and connect them to District 2. Yep. And that is done intentionally to make sure District 3 continues to be represented by Republicans.
That's right.
So thank you for your courage. Thank you for your testimony. And I look forward to your race. And I wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
Sure. Bye-bye.
Chairman.
Councilman Koch?
Yeah, that was done to water down the chairman's support in District 2.
Look, there are compromises to be made, and I lost a piece of a district that's really important to this, what I believe is important to the second, but in the sake of compromise, and it'll change again. So hang in there, Sean.
Thank you.
And you're not going to have me to worry about anymore.
Well, I know that, but there's a
Retiring.
problem with that as well. But, okay.
You what? You have a problem with that?
Putting an incumbent in before the end of session, yeah, is a problem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McIntosh. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Linda Dorsey Walker, who is here in person.
Ms. Dorsey Walker.
Good evening. My name is Linda Dorsey Walker, Chair of Vote for More, also known as For More for Baltimore County, a ballot initiative that would have expanded the size of the Baltimore County Council from 7 to 11 districts. I come before you today to testify in favor of the legislation proposed by Councilman Pat Young, Bill 7024. The map, as prepared and proposed, is unfair, one of the greatest threats to African-American power and inclusion that I've seen since I ran as the first African-American and woman in 1994, 7 years before the creation of the first and still the only Black district. Mr. Patoka's map dilutes African-American power in the current 4th district from about 74% down to about 56%, and the proposed District 3 would only be about 54% African-American. He says this is a majority Black district. I would say on paper only, since it would be very easy to run or get to African Americans to run, therefore enabling someone that might be a favorite son to get elected. Someone said earlier, no one had been specific about how to change the map. I came months ago and said, would you please remove precinct 04-013 and put it back into District 2 where it's been all these years? That was somehow ignored. The Vote for More ballot initiative was from the very start deemed dangerous by many of the people on this county council and called blatantly partisan. It was not. It was an attempt to bring in more inclusion from minorities and women and young people, LGBTQ, disabled people, and new Americans, all of whom are competing for seats on this county council. Not just 2 seats, you need more than just 2 seats to accommodate them. When the restructuring committee was set up, the first thing that was decided was we will not discuss demographics, the changing demographics. How on earth are you going to address the future of Baltimore County if you're not going to allow race and ethnicity and gender to be discussed? Please know that we secured nearly 12,000 Baltimore County, registered Baltimore County voters' signatures. Over 2,000 of them were mysteriously, arbitrarily, and erroneously thrown out. Why? Because they lacked a middle initial. Had all the rest of the information correct, but the middle initial was not there. I'm here to say that we need to have a way of guaranteeing that more people have the opportunity for discussion around what goes forward. In Vote for More, we didn't call for 1 public hearing, but 3 public hearings, 1 at the beginning, middle, and end. That's not going to happen now because Vote for More didn't get approved. To say that we've had public input, no, we haven't had public input. We've shown up time after time and had our input thrown out. All I can say is very few people know or understand what's going on. I do know that over 50 people have contacted me in the past week. They have said that if this map bill is not approved, they will vote en masse against question A. They'd rather keep 7 districts where they know for a fact there will be at least 1 African American, because under the current map plus 9 district combination, the odds are very, very strong, and let me say that again, very strong, that there will be not 1 African American elected. And that's something we cannot take the risk of. We'd rather take the opportunity to try again for 4 more, hopefully this time without, I don't know, whatever happened, because we're not going to go for the okie doke. We can see what's going on behind the fact that Councilman Ertel, who was a ballot petition circulator and signed the petition very early on, is one of the main people saying that he now wants to vote in favor of giving the Republican Party a disproportionate amount of power.
There you go.
Councilman Crandall, you said that the process is the process. The process is the process, sir. And the process says that in Baltimore County, out of every 3 voters, 2 of them chose on their their own to register as as Democrats. You cannot then say it's only fair if you give us 50-50 of everything. That's not fair and balanced. Sir, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't say you said it. I'm giving you the facts. No, I said, I'm telling you the facts. You said the process is the process, and I'm saying this process is the process. In Baltimore County.
No, you put numbers in my mouth.
I didn't say you said it, sir.
Let's come to order here. Ms. Dorsey.
How about we elect Americans? How about we elect Americans?
Council McCrandle, Ms. Dorsey Walker, could you summarize?
Yes. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I never said he said it. I'm referring to the fact that you talked about the process being the process. I agree. The process is the process. But another process that we have to deal with and accept, regardless of our party affiliation. I'm saying these are my words. You, sir, have to deal with the fact that in Baltimore County, out of every 3 voters, 2 of them decided to register as Democrats, not as Republicans. So you can't call anything gerrymandered if something works out with a 2-to-1 balance. You can't call it gerrymandered. You're right. The process
Ms. Dorsey Walker,
is the
can you
process.
summarize, not filibuster?
Again, I would ask you to consider the fact that there are many, many thousands of people who expressed their votes, their opinions. They wanted to run as women, as young people. I want to see them run. I want us to have many more. You talked about 7 people being on this county council. There should be 11. So says the Charter Review Commission from 1978. We should have 11, and I want to see it.
Dorsey Walker,
I'm going to say,
summarize, not filibuster.
Support this bill. Support it, please.
Okay, thank you.
And
that's your summary.
We'll see whether we can support the bill, the referendum question, depending on your vote next week.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Dana Vickers-Shelley, who is online.
Okay.
You may begin your testimony.
Ms. Vickers-Shelley?
She doesn't have a microphone. I'm not sure if she's on 2 different devices. Let me see. I think she's on by phone and on, let me try this. Are you there? Oh, 1 second. Are you there?
Yeah.
You're on 2 devices, phone and something else. You may begin your testimony.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good evening, council members. I'm Dana Vickers-Shelley, Executive Director of the ACLU of Maryland. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. The opportunity and challenge that the council and our community has is this: a growing and diverse community of constituents who enrich Baltimore County by bringing new expertise and experiences that contribute to the county's success. The council member asked earlier about what are the problems, why are we still discussing this? First, in terms of the process, lack of transparency. Secondly, this map was not adopted through the county's ordinary redistricting process. Thus, the plan and map failed to consider the dilutive impact it has on BIPOC voters, which is problematic. As with the county's 2021 redistricting plan, the Bill 4724 plan and map are racially diluted, unlawful, and violate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Problem: the map amended to Bill 4724 offers Black voters just 2 realistic election opportunities out of 9. Yet with the 9-district council, it is easily possible to create a plan with 3 majority Black districts plus a 4th majority BIPOC district. Only by unlawfully diluting the Black vote could the council require a map that limits BIPOC opportunities to 2 districts. Problem: this is a racially discriminatory plan. If the ballot measure passes in its current form, the county will almost certainly expose itself to renewed voting rights litigation to invalidate this plan. While some council members contend the map could be revisited, others have said they only supported the expansion bill after this map was committed to, suggesting it will not, in fact, be revisited later, as that is not required by the measure. As Executive Director of the ACLU of Maryland and a resident of Baltimore County, I submit this discussion and this process should be more about the residents of Baltimore County being represented as protected by the Voting Rights Act and not the political prospects and futures of elected officials. That's the definition of gerrymandering, and we must avoid that. How to solve the problem? Make sure the laudable goals of council expansion are not undermined by linking the measure to a racially discriminatory map or unlawful directive concerning the school board. The ACLU believes that Bill 7024, combined with changes already made by the county to the ballot language, would sufficiently alter the measure to meet the non-discrimination goals we have outlined. Thank you.
Councilman Marks?
Ms. Vickers-Shelley, the ACLU claims to be nonpartisan. Is that correct?
We are a nonpartisan organization, sir.
That's been disputed recently. Ms. Belcastro, if you can put that up there. The ACLU, while I will contend, has done some very good work on behalf of Americans, has increasingly become political, partisan. And I'll just put this graphic up. I spent $800,000 to remind one political candidate's work on criminal justice reform in Georgia. So, you know, that's out there. Thank you.
Any additional comments for Ms. Vickers-Shelley? Okay, thank you, Ms. Vickers-Shelley. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Mr. Chair, just give me a moment to catch
Okay,
up.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just everybody's shouting, and I'm trying
We got
to.
a display or? Okay, sorry.
Our next speaker is Jyoti Mohan. Jyoti Mohan. I always pronounce that incorrectly. And they are online.
Ms. Mohan?
Councilman, and thank you for this opportunity to let me testify. I'm just going to read my remarks. I hear Councilman Silman's argument as to respecting the process. I agree. I'd like to ask them why the task force appointed to investigate public testimony they were mandated to take into consideration. When the public did provide input and overwhelmingly asked for task force came back with a pitiful compromise of 2 added seats. Why then, Councilman, when your constituents made it this not a unanimous vote? As for the current map, I hear Councilman Catch's point about gerrymandering. I am his constituent and respect the healthy and civil exchange of ideas that Councilman Catch always supports. But when we look at the current map, the most obviously gerrymandered district is currently Council District 3, where a ludicrous little oval in the center of the district has been carved out of it. Despite being part of the overwhelming public, 27 out of 30 people who testified, who cared enough to testify in favor of expanding the council by 4, we, your constituents, are accepting the increase by 2. So far, I've heard my Baltimore County councilmen argue across party lines, appeal to each other based on their own electoral popularity in their districts. What I have not heard is what we, your constituents, the citizens of Baltimore County, want. We made it clear in an overwhelming majority to the work group, we want to expand by 4. The report recommended a lackluster 2. 8,046,161 citizens of Baltimore County accepted that decision as slow and unsatisfactory progress, but progress nevertheless. Now we're asking for a fair redistricting based on the population of Baltimore County, which reflects the shifting demographics of Baltimore County. A new map that reflects 9 districts and is best representative of the demographics of Baltimore County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mahan. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Cheryl Gottlieb, who is on virtually. Ms. Gottlieb, you may begin your testimony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so this isn't the first time that I've come to a council meeting to chastise the council. I believe that the bill as written, the original bill with the original map, isn't fair. But I'm coming here to ask a question mainly. I'm confused why it is that we're talking about this now when ballots for people who have chosen to vote by mail have already been mailed, and quite possibly there's a number of citizens that have already voted on this ballot measure. So I'm confused why we're talking about this at all at this late of a date. It seems like we're past the time, and I just wanted to note that I'm an equal opportunity chastiser, and that while the last time that I was here I chastised Mr. Marks, this time it's a Democrat. So it doesn't, I'm nonpartisan in my chastising, and I do believe that we need to work to make the council more transparent than it has been in the past. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Gottlieb, for your equal opportunity chastising. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker, please.
Our last speaker for this item this evening is Ann George, who is on virtually.
Ms. George.
You may unmute yourself.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Good evening. I'm the last speaker. Ann George here, a resident of District 3. And I really watched this whole thing. I want to say that I originally voted against 4724, and I'm now not voting, but did not support it, and I am supporting 7024. This whole thing is a mess right now. I've listened to both sides tonight very carefully, kind of threw out what I was going to say, but we've got to do better. And it's obvious that it's not only the process that's been flawed, but the map is as well. Quite frankly, we have 7 men, 6 of whom are white. This council, I'm almost embarrassed when I talk to people in other parts of Maryland to share that with them. In that 2024, for some reason, we can't have a more representative council. And now we had an opportunity to do that by adding 2 more. And it seems that now that's flawed. Why? Because we had to make deals. And don't tell me that each of you, I know that Chairman Patoka wanted to get this done. He saw it as a progressive move, but obviously you had some opposition and needed to get other people on board to feel like they bought into it. I was very impressed by the way Councilman Jones presented the situation. I think that is true. It sounds true to me. And I mean, you made a deal so that you each would have districts that would support your incumbency, or at least the incumbency of somebody of the same party. And you know what that means, that is evidently it's possible that even though this county is 69% Democrat and 31% Republican, it's possible, and maybe that's true, that you know, I could have a Democrat and not want him to be here and vote for a Republican, but I think it obviously looks like it's self-serving. And I commend Councilman in the first district who presented this. And it doesn't look like you're going to go for it, but I'll tell you, it's just engendering more and more hostility and disengagement from citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. George. Councilman Marks?
I neglected to thank Ms. McIntosh. You were honest. You said that you went to a training program, Emerge, that trains Democratic partisan candidates, and you were honest. And a lot of people have come before us, and haven't said that they're active members of one political party or another, but you were at least honest, and I want to thank you.
Okay. Does that conclude the speakers for this issue? Okay, we're going to move on.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Do any of my colleagues need to take a human being break? Okay, then let's keep going. Okay, next is Bill 7124.
Chairman.
This is a great bill. This is, who's the sponsor of this, the lead sponsor?
It's me. Everybody signed on.
Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill 7124 updates this and standardizes the compensation and expense reimbursement rules for members of most Baltimore County boards, commissions, committees, panels, and foundations. As stated at the last work session, it clarifies how members of a commission can be reimbursed for approved expenses, working with the county executive's office and other members here. It's now currently allowed. This would allow for it in the situation that they've gotten permission to make an expenditure. They can request for, with funds available, a reimbursement of those funds. Appreciate everybody's support on it.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Young. Anyone have any comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to let the council members know, and you may already know, there will be an amendment to the bill, very technical, just to add the Community Reinvestment and Repair Commission into the bill. It was such a new commission that it didn't make it into the original draft. But we will be we will be asking to amend the bill to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Any additional questions? Okay, we did 7424, so we're going to move to bills for first consideration. And first we have Michelle Mills, from the Deputy Director from the Department of Aging. Come on down, Ms. Mills.
Good evening. I am here tonight to ask approval for, or start the process for the approval of a supplemental appropriation of state funds totaling $94,868 to a brand new program for long-term and dementia care that we're going to start in the Department of Aging.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mills. Do any of the members, Councilman Marks?
No, I haven't done that.
Okay. Ms. Mills, hearing no questions, thank you for your testimony.
All right, thank you very much.
Did you enjoy the deliberation on Bill 7024?
I did.
Good.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Okay, our next item is Bill 7624. This is amending the 2024-25 capital budget. Mr. Carpenter.
Good evening, council members. Bill 7624, the administration is requesting 10 supplemental capital appropriations of bond premium generated from the county's July 9th, 2024 bond sale, totaling $14,425,197 as follows, and as amended. Curbs and gutters and sidewalks, $1.5 million. Road resurfacing, $1.5 million. Traffic calming, $400,000. Traffic signals, $400,000. Community neighborhood park development, $5,375,197. Recreation facility renovations, $2.8 million. Athletic field construction and renovation, $750,000. Park and recreation center accessibility, $700,000. Park and recreation facility acquisition, $500,000. And greenway streams and trails, $500,000. Details of which were included in Exhibit B, and I believe we had passed along our intentions at the time of the budget, and this is briefly amended slightly as a result of the actual premium delivered to us.
Okay, Councilman Marks.
Thank you very much. I see Ms. Buckler in the back. You can just shout the answer, I guess. And I just want to memorialize this. The two projects proposed funding in the Campbell Boulevard area meet the manual and uniform traffic control devices and all of our traffic calming requirements if applicable, correct? So they are ready to be built, correct? A contract in place, right. They are ready to move forward, okay. Thank you for that. The road resurfacing program, will those details be available to us as well, the roads that are being resurfaced? You've been very helpful, and I want to thank you for that, but will we be able to see the roads? Okay. Okay. Okay, I want to thank the administration for its support of these initiatives.
And you forgot to say that Director Buckler is permanent, or will be permanent once we vote. If we vote, but I think we will. That was a bad process we had there.
So, question. Mr. Carpenter, I have a couple of questions. So is this different? This is something different than what was presented in the 25 capital budget, in the county executive's budget message? Okay. So in the second district, in the capital side, there was only 500,000 for the whole second district for the Pikesville Armory. That's it, 500,000. And so what I'm asking is, since there's an opportunity for additional dollars, 500,000 was disappointing. So can you tell me in this 14 million in CP, it's 14 million for what parts are going to the second district? Because this is really critical, because no other district, I think, no, I'm standing corrected. We got 500,000 for the Pikesville Armory, and we got maybe 200 for the library. But I mean, if you count up the capital budget and divide, and just do math divided by 7, the standard deviation off the mean for the capital budget for the second district is off the charts. And so there's an expectation that there's some remedy here. And I would hope, Madam AO, that there's some remedy here, because 500,000, it's an abandonment of a district. It's kind of what Governor Hogan, and no disrespect to it's kind of what Governor Hogan did when he did the map of Maryland and left out Baltimore. You know, you left out the second district.
Sir, I think it would be more appropriate to look at the whole capital budget and not just one line item, because I don't think that.
But we're talking about fiscal 25. I just forget all the other stuff. Fiscal 25. There was $30 million and, you know, we bought parking lots, we bought shopping centers, but in District 2, we just put a 500,000 in. And so here's an additional 14 million. There's got to be some level of expectation that the county is going to invest in 1/7 of its communities.
Well, what I will tell you is that I think we've been pretty equitable and transparent, but we could agree to disagree on it.
So how would 500,000 in a capital budget be equitable when the capital budget is $1 billion? It's either an oversight or it's intentional. One of the two. It's an oversight or it's intentional. And I think if it was an oversight, let's make the correction. If it's intentional, I realize this is the way we're going to go.
Sir, with all due respect, I believe that the county exec had meetings with each of the council members to have a conversation about the budget.
It wasn't the county exec, it was Brad. It was Brad this year.
Okay.
So I just want to bring it to your attention, because if I'm not speaking for the residents of the second district, like saying, hey, we have capital needs too, nobody is. And here's 14 million. We got 500,000 in the budget message, plus a little bit to the library. So here's an additional 14 million. Are we going to say, is it an oversight again, or is it with intent again? That's all I want to know. Is it intentional that we're going to, is it my constituents didn't, they came out, maybe they came out at the wrong time, because what I'm thinking is maybe they came out after the budget was formulated during the county executive's budget hearings. Maybe they need to come, when is the planning board's capital budget input meeting? October 17th. So, Madam Mayo, should I send my constituents to that planning board meeting so that they can get in on the budget earlier? Or is it not matter because it's not going to be favorable to the residents of the second district? I mean, my Powhatan streets, every time I go to a Powhatan meeting, they say, Kellogg's Road, please. Robin Hill Road, please. Norvo, please. Tulsa, please. And so we go, they come out to the capital budget meeting, they say, Powhatan streets. And then I go to the meetings every month, and they say, what's happening, Councilman Izzy? What is happening? Why can't the county? And I say, well, we got $500,000 for Pikesville Armory. We got something for the Pikesville Library, but here's an additional 14 million, and I can't get an agency to articulate what's in the second district, because we can say whatever we want as council members, but how we articulate public policy is through the budget, the capital budget, the operating budget. Because if we don't budgetize it, then it's just talk. And so I feel like, I've said this directly to the county executive. I've had numerous discussions with Brad on this, but we exist in District 2, and we need to exist in the capital budget as well. And especially when $14 million of new dollars are coming. And I haven't heard one reasonable explanation as to why the second district has been abandoned. So it's either intent or oversight, and I'd just like an explanation on that.
So I would suggest that we look at the capital budget holistically over.
Why can't we just look at fiscal 25?
You just asked me, and I was just trying to answer the
Okay, go
question.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
Okay.
you can see how frustrating it is.
I know, and I don't want you to be frustrated, but if we are being transparent, I suggest that we look at the budget, the capital budget holistically, and look at how we've allocated funding based on projects, time, and fiscal year. Yes, you're talking about this one fiscal year, but we can also go back to the fiscal year before. And I know very specifically there were several projects that were done in Pikesville, but there's no need to argue it back and forth. And I would not do that with you, sir. I wouldn't do that with you, sir. But I have an obligation to say to you that we have been transparent in terms of what we bring forth with the capital budget, and we've tried to be as equitable as possible.
Well, if you're going to be transparent, what I would ask is if you could identify in this 14 million, what is in the second district? That would be transparent to me.
Mr. Chairman.
And I will get the list because I emailed the list to every last councilman about
This is
what was
beyond
going to
Exhibit 1?
be in the supplemental budget that was coming. I sent an email with everything that would be in there, and I will pull it and I will resend it to you.
Okay, and that's in addition to
And it was
Exhibit 1.
also in the budget questions that you all asked us before it actually came forward.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Young.
CEO Walker, wanted to just ask, capital budget's an extensive document, right? During our own budget deliberations, when we're meeting with the executive staff, because at the end of the day, we approve the capital budget and the budget in general, but it is put together by the executive staff before it comes to us. There have our requests for capital projects where we all have needs. They far exceed what's available. And sometimes the projects we requested get funded, but then in the capital budget itself, there's spending related to capital improvements, capital everything in every district that falls outside of our requests. So if I were to get a request from you all or from the executive branch related to a capital expense for $250,000, that doesn't mean that there's only $250,000 in capital expenses being made in my district.
No, sir. And that's why I say it's important to look at it holistically. Our capital budget is usually a 5-year process. So we may have 250 in FY '25, but we may have 2 million in FY '26. It depends on the time of the project, the capital project, and where we are with that capital project.
And that also depends on the department that needs, that requires the work that's done by DPW, because there's our requests, there's departmental needs, as well as needs from the district that have been determined by the executive branch, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So that's why I'm suggesting that the council needs be formulated in the early portion of the budget when it's first formulated. Once you're in, you're in. If you're not in, it's really hard to get in. And so, you know, that's why I'm going to suggest that my constituents show up to the October 16th Planning Board capital budget meeting so that we can early get it, because it's agency driven. Capital budget's agency driven. So an agency makes the request, right? And the agency has to have field knowledge of what the needs are. And so if the agency has the field knowledge, then they're able to make requests that meet some of the needs. Because quite frankly, by the time we get to the budget town hall meetings, it's too late. Because the budget's already been sent, agencies have already sent their, by January, haven't the agencies already sent in their requests?
We go through but they have sent in their
Right.
requests. However, we go through the budget process and have several meetings and deliberations back and forth.
So what I'm suggesting is I
throughout
want the
process.
community stuff to get into the initial request. That would make it more likely to end up in the budget at the end, because if it's already been formulated, we're trying to get in from the side rather than from the early point. I think I have made my point. I would just ask, and do we have, Justin, do we have the list of second district projects out of this? Okay. So that would be out of the 1.5 million on road resurfacing. We have a list related to that. But I'll tell you what, if you can get those Powhatan streets in there, that would, because the Powhatan community, they view it as a term in terms of equity, that they say, well, we're inside the Beltway, so we're part of Baltimore City. That's what they tell me, that they feel like they're, and I shared this with Savitra the other day when I met with her, that in terms of equity, whether it's true or not, that's how the community residents feel. Okay, I'll stop, but I do think this is an important point.
Mr. Chairman, just, I forget the timing of this, but just around budget time, I believe that we were all given a capital projects list by district.
Yes,
Okay,
and I have one project in there.
okay.
So what I'm saying is let's have input at an earlier stage in the process.
Okay, well, that's between you and the administration, but I was a little unclear because there have been instances in the past, not necessarily with this administration, where we got no paving list, we got no capital project list by district broken down like that. So I just want to make sure that you're in receipt of the same thing that I was in receipt.
To Ms. Buckler's credit and to your credit, Ms. Walker, the paving situation has gotten better, say, sans the Powhatan streets. Okay. Any additional questions? Okay.
Councilman, maybe we talk to the pending new chief of DPW.
Ms. Buckler?
Lauren, we're going to talk heat maps.
All right, we're going to move on to the next item is what we're going to do. Sorry for belaboring it, but it's really an important point for my district. Okay, next is Councilman Jones, zoning regulations, bulk regulations, OT. Not HT, OT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have introduced Bill 77-24, in which I propose some changes to the OT zone limited to the Owings Mills Town Center area. The OT zone was created in 1984 to permit the development of employment-intensive office uses and high-density residential in proximity to town centers. Over the past years, the office market, particularly for suburban office parks, has changed significantly. Office parks in certain parts of Baltimore County have been experiencing high vacancy rates, and there is less interest in or need for office space after COVID. Instead of allowing these spaces to remain vacant, I propose to broaden the uses allowed in the OT zone in the Owings Mills Town Center area, including adding back in the ability to have residential uses in this area. Although OT zones throughout Baltimore County allow residential uses, for some reason in 2009, the council eliminated the ability to have residential uses within the Owings Mills Town Center area. There's no rationale to leave this restriction in place and to penalize the Owings Mills Town Center. With Bill 77-24, I am proposing to lift this restriction in light of the need for additional housing in Baltimore County and to allow other compatible uses in this limited area. And as always, I'm asking my council colleagues to support this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Jones, is this a countywide bill or it pertains only to Owings Mills Town Center?
Only to the Owings Mills Town Center.
Okay.
For some reason in 2009, some restrictions were placed on it.
Okay. Thanks for that. Madam CAO, this sort of piqued my curiosity a little bit. Would you be kind enough to send along a not so urgent request to Mr. Gutwald? No, I'm sorry, Mr. Lafferty. I'd kind of be interested to know where the OT zones are at least in the 7th district, if not in Baltimore County. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for Councilman Jones? Thank you. The next item is Colonel Kelly. I think this is for Colonel Kelly.
You seem to always do it to the police
Did I
department.
do this to you before, Colonel Kelly? Have you wait to the whole? Okay, good. What a team player.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, and may it please the members of the council. I come before you this evening requesting approval of a contract with OMTC Land Unit 9 LLC, doing business as Marriott Owings Mills Metro Center, located in the 4th Councilmanic District, to provide hotel accommodations, facility rental, and food and beverages for the annual police hostage negotiation seminar. The kind of the history behind this is the Baltimore County Police Foundation and the Baltimore Field Office of the Federal Bureau of Investigations has sponsored the annual police hostage negotiation seminar for 43 years. For about 30 of those 43 years, our seminar was hosted at the Delta Hotels in Hunt Valley. However, as many of you know, the hotel ceased operations last October. Last year, the department came before this council and you graciously approved a 2-year contract with the Marriott Owings Mills Metro Center to host our 2024 seminar. That was a 2-year contract. However, since our subsequent seminar this year, it was very successful. The county has renegotiated the contract with Marriott Mills Metro Center to include some additional and more favorable requirements for the county, to include some guest room accommodations, free Wi-Fi, and things of that nature. Therefore, we are requesting a 5-year contract, 1 year with an additional 4 one-year options for a total of 5 years, amounting $824,324 to host our annual hostage negotiation seminar that is known internationally. We have a lot of participants from Canada and all across the country to come. the Baltimore County Police Foundation will reimburse Baltimore County for all costs associated with the seminar, including any liquidated damages. I should note that the Marriott Owens Mills Metro Center is the only hotel in Baltimore County that is able to accommodate an expected number of attendees. And it was important for the department to have this event in Baltimore County, not outside, because a lot of the attendees afterwards, they go to our restaurants, they go to our shopping centers and things like that. So I do appreciate the council support and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Colonel Kelly. Any members have any questions? Yes. Councilman Jones?
Yeah, Colonel Kelly, first of all, thank you so much for your service to the Baltimore County citizens, as well as your service in the police department. I was fortunate enough to attend for some time, not the whole seminar, of course, but the seminar last year. Or was it this year?
It was earlier this year. Yeah,
this
you're
year.
right.
And I was most impressed by watching people from all over the world come to Baltimore County to hear our officers put on a seminar. That gave me a sense of pride to see all these people from all over the world come here and see the best that Baltimore County had to offer in our Metro Center and the Marriott, and then have an opportunity to go out and explore Baltimore County, I think is a very, very good thing. And I'm just very proud of the police department for putting on a seminar for so many years. And like I said, I think it's a source of pride for all of us. And I want to, just recently, after the Ravens put a hurting on the Bills, I saw them, they were staying at that Marriott. Like most of the NFL teams that come to visit stay there. And again, it's a source of pride because they're not tied to Baltimore County. They can stay anywhere they want in this region, yet they choose to come to Baltimore County and stay at that Marriott. And I think that's really says good things about Baltimore County. So thank you very much, Colonel.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I was going to chime in, but I think Councilman Jones said it very well, and I don't think I could say it any better. Colonel, thanks as always for this, and good to see you, sir.
Nice to see you.
Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you all. Good evening.
And Ms. Belcastro, do you hear the Colonel's request that we put cushions in the chamber seats? Okay. Our next item is Ms. Faith Thomas, real estate compliance. We're going to talk about drainage.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and council members. The administration is requesting approval of a contract to acquire easement access spanning approximately 0.111 acres for $5,895 for the Jennifer Branch Relief Sewer Project east of Harford Road and south of Northwind Road in Parkville. The Van Doan family currently owns the property, which is located at 9807 Harford Road and zoned DR 5.5. The easements will be used for drainage and utility easements and temporary construction areas. The office advised that the county's engineering contractor, Johnson, Miramon, and Thompson, utilized the valuation formula and price per square foot for a similar nearby property to determine the value of the proposed acquisition. The office advised that the county's appraisal consultant, Everett Bentonfield Advisors, completed an appraisal of 3110B Summit Avenue effective February 14, 2024, and JMT completed the appraisal review. JMT offered the property owner $5,895 on behalf of the county, which was accepted.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Do any of the members have any questions, comments, or thoughts to share? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is HT, Horacio Tablada. And let me just say this, Mr. Tablada, Director Tablada, your workshop or seminar that you had, a summit, was a summit at our, yeah, it was exceptional. Your speakers were thoughtful, they delivered really good presentations, and when I went back to the office, I felt like I learned something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the council. Horacio Tablado, HD. I'm the Director of Environmental Protection Sustainability. Thank you for your feedback on that workshop. I learned a few things myself. It was great to have had the Assistant Secretary for Environmental, EJ for Environmental Justice, and the Director of Water Science for MDE provide a lot of information. I hope that people learn, and that's part of what we do, is try to create network so we can grow and do better services for Baltimore County. So this evening, I'm here to request the approval of an amendment to our urban tree services contract. The Baltimore County, as you know, is responsible for planting trees, and that's part of the requirement to meet our TMDL MS4 permits requirements. Trees is one of the ways that create and remove nutrients from the water, and helps give us cleaner air, provides shade for everybody. So it's something that we promote and do a lot. And this contract that we have here in particular is with Level Landscape LLC. And they're the ones that provide the services for the last 2 years in the Operation ReTree. And ReTree is our equity program that we have in Baltimore County, where we planting trees in a lot of the urban or more disadvantaged communities. We have the other street tree program, which is replacing trees that are taken down. And we have the rural tree forestation, which is more in the upper area where we plant a lot. Baltimore County has done a lot of great work on tree replacement. And this company, this Level Landscape, is one of the 3 contractors that we have. And the reason for the amendment is that we want to keep, early in this year, I came to the council for the approval of 2 other contracts. Well, this amendment will synchronize all 3 contracts at the same time. And it will give us more economic benefit because it will hold the prices down for the next 8 years. So it's an amendment to extend the life of the contract by 8 years. And also there's a name change that you probably see, but it's more like a technical. The company changed their name from Level Land to Level Landscape, but it's the same people. And they're doing great work in Baltimore County, and we are glad to have them as one of the 3 contractors that do tremendous work. And we are in the planting season of trees, and we're going to be doing some tree events around the county, and also we want to, we're going to be doing obviously the tree away in the springtime. So anyway, with that, I respectfully request your support next week when you vote on this, and I'm here to answer any questions as always.
Thank you, Mr. Tablada. Councilman Morris?
Thank you, HT, for all your good service. During the master plan deliberations, we added an amendment to the master plan that asks for funding for tree planting in communities where there had been growth maybe in the 1970s and 80s, but no trees were planted. I mean, I can think of places like Owings Mills, places in Perry Hall, White Marsh, that aren't getting the benefits of this tree planting program. They're kind of lost. I was just wondering if there's been any consideration to expanding the tree planting program.
We're always looking for places to plant trees, but it not always works the way we want to, because sometimes there's limit. It has to be. We do it on county properties, and we do some in private properties too, but they need to be with the consent of the people. So if you, this is a call out to anyone. If you have a place, a recommendation to plant trees, let us know. Saul, many of you know him. He's one of my staff. He's tremendous and very aggressive, looking for places to plant trees. So why don't you send me that information? We'll be glad to look into it.
HT,
Yes, sir.
so Saul is great. He came out to so he was in Rec and Parks, but now he's in?
No, he's Saul Pace is in.
He's always been with you? Okay.
He used to be in Public Works and Transportation Department.
Gotcha.
Many years ago, and we snatched him to come to the right side.
He's outstanding. He was at a Williamsburg community meeting and a Villanova community meeting, and he worked with all the homeowners and identified tree locations. And now when you drive through, this was maybe a year ago, 6 months, when you drive through, it's beautiful. All the trees are planted, and it makes a difference. And it's one of those quality of life issues that people, for us as council members, I think all of us know this, the work that we do in working with the agencies, like we impact a person's life directly. Sometimes as you go higher up in government, it becomes more abstract. You're looking at, I know in the state government, we're limiting the harvest of blue crabs in the lower bay, and you don't know for 10 years if that works or not. But the things we do, we plant a tree, we know it works. So thank you, good work. The only thing I would recommend about the conference, the hummus sandwich was a little weird. A little weird.
Well,
what do you think, Kylie? Did you have a hummus sandwich? Okay.
I had the hummus too, sir. It was because I had a word H. I thought, oh, they made a special sandwich just for me.
Yeah, HT. H, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Tablada.
Yes, sir.
Any other additional questions? Councilman Ertel?
I too would just like to commend the department for the tree program. I think I'm nearing in my district now close to 850 trees that we've planted in the last, almost 2 years. And it's a lot of neighborhoods where it was just completely devoid of trees. A lot of neighborhoods that are low income where it's really going to make a difference. And just having the trees on the street now and knowing that eventually they're going to be, these great shade trees, but just seeing them, just seeing the trees down the street with their, the watering bags and it just makes the street look so much more complete.
Thank you, sir. That's part of the contract that we have. It provides a 1-year maintenance contract. So dead trees they get replaced and things like that. So we we ensure that the trees will have a sustainable life after that. All right.
No, thank you, HT.
Thank you, sir.
Our next item is going to be LB. Is LB here? Lauren Buckner? Then MC is next.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Lauren Buckler, Acting Director for Public Works and Transportation. I have before you an item for a contract for Microtech Designs, which is to provide maintenance and repair services for instrumentation and controls installed in the county's sewage pumping and treatment stations. The contract commences upon council approval and continues for 1 year and will renew automatically for up to 4 years, with the option to extend the initial term of any renewal period for an additional 120 days. The contract's estimated compensation is $170,000 for the 5-year, 4-month term, including the renewal and extension periods. The county maintains 120 sewage pumping stations, 1 community wastewater treatment facility, and 4 freshwater treatment plants. So this is the contractor doing the repairs on the control systems that we have in these facilities. Happy to take any questions that you have.
Do any of the members have any questions for Ms. Buckler? Okay, Councilman Jones?
Sorry. No question, just congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sure you will do well. Well-deserved.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Those that don't know, the county executive nominated her for the permanent position today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Buckler. Congratulations. And now, since we're doing initials, MC. That's a good initials. That's good.
Thank you,
MC
Councilman.
Carpenter. No, MC.
Councilman, FM5, we're bringing forward, the administration is requesting approval of a contract with ABL Technologies Limited Liability Corporation to provide death audit services to identify deceased payees of the employee retirement system of Baltimore County in order to detect and prevent improper benefit payments. The contract commences on November 22nd, 2024, will continue for 3 years, and will renew automatically for 2 additional one-year periods, with the option to extend the initial term or any and renewal term an additional 180 days. The contract provides the compensation may not exceed $65,000 for the entire 5-year and 6-month term, including the renewal and extension periods.
Do we send checks to dead people?
We try to avoid it at all costs.
Just curious.
Is there a current mechanism for how we deal? I mean, we're just relying on the fact that the
send quarterly
the deceased family says this person has.
We have that upon occasion, but we do send quarterly they do almost we send quarterly our records, they check, as well as they're doing through their own databases, almost a continuous check based upon what we have given them previously. So do that, and we'll get back to us if they see someone ping on that list.
Right, okay, great.
Okay, thank you all. It's been a long night in this part-time job we have. 4.5 hours. Thank you all.
Don't call it